Can I have your attention, please? I'd like to call the meeting to order. And good evening and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board meeting for Thursday, April 21st, 2011. Tonight we do have two matters on for public hearing. Could I just get a show of hands to see which most people are here for? The first one is for the 363 Boston Road Cell Tower. Who's here? Okay, thank you. And the next one I have is for Walgreens on Middlesex Edward Street. Okay. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the first matter that for the site plan review on the Walgreens matter. Let me just read this into the record if we could, please. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to the application by Kaufman Realty, Inc. for the site plan review in definitive subdivision for a project located at the above-listed address. The proposal includes the demolition of the existing buildings and structures located along the current alignment of Edward Street, the construction of 14,820 square foot Walgreens pharmacy in relocation off Edward Street. The development project will be located at located on 68,067 square foot lot and includes 30 parking spaces, a drive-through window, and includes access for Middlesex and Edward Street. The applicant is seeking a site plan review under section 11.4 of the city zoning code and a definitive subdivision approval. The parcel is located in the regional retail zoning district. I did receive a letter from Attorney James Flood. I do see Catherine Flood here today. Catherine, do you want to be heard on the letter? Do you want me to read it into the record? Or?
You can read it into record, please.
I did receive a letter. It's addressed to myself, Thomas Linehan, Esquire, Chairman, Lowell Planning Board. Dear Attorney Linehan, as attorney for Kaufman Realty, Inc., I am writing to request that my client's application for definitive subdivision approval and the site plan approval scheduled for a hearing on Thursday, April 21st, 2001, be continued until the May 16th, 2011 Planning Board meeting. I've recently received comments from the City Department of Lowell regarding their traffic engineer reports, and my client wants to have additional time to address these recommendations that have been recommended by the City Department. Therefore, I am hereby requesting this matter be continued. You want to just state your name for the record, please, and have anything further to say if you could?
Good evening, Attorney Catherine Flood, here on behalf of Kaufman Realty.
Okay. So we did receive a letter in regards to continue this matter. Let me address that matter with the board first. Any of the board members have any questions or any recommendations in regards to the continuance?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we'd allow the applicant to continue to the next scheduled planning board meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. I think the next schedule would be the first week in May, so can we go to the 16th as requested?
Yes, as counsel for the applicant requested May 16th, yes.
We have a motion and a second to continue the matter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. So therefore, this matter on Edwards, Middlesex Street will be continued to May 16th on the public hearing for that night. So if anybody's watching or anybody has any concerns, we will be addressing that matter on that night.
Thank you very
Attorney Flood.
much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave the Walgreens matter, I was just wondering, in going through the materials, a lot of it is, of course, traffic-related. We've got traffic reports and peer reviews, et cetera. And I was wondering if we might put in a request that we have the city traffic engineer attend the meeting so he could provide his input, perhaps answer any questions that we might have. So if we could perhaps request imposed upon him to attend that May 16th meeting, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's probably better to have him speak on behalf of himself than me try to.
So could you relay that request?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay,
yes, we
thank
can
you.
do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
nice day.
Okay, so that matter is continued to May 16th. Thank you, anybody who's present for that matter, or if anybody has concerns, we will address those on that time. Okay. Moving along, the next matter is for a site plan review at 363 Boston Road. This is on for public hearing. will be held to hear all interested persons relative to the application by U.S. Wireless, Inc. and T-Mobile Northeast LLC for a site plan review of the proposed project located at the above address. The applicant proposes to construct and operate a wireless communication facility that includes a 150-foot tower consisting of 9 wireless communication panel antennas. The proposed tower and accessory equipment contained within a fenced 3,000 square foot compound will be located directly south of the cemetery on the property. The project is located on an 11.6 acre parcel in the traditional single-family zoning district and requires site plan review under section 7.6.2 of the zoning code. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Good evening. My name is Francis Parisi, P-A-R-I-S-I, an attorney representing the applicant, U.S. Wireless, Inc., and T-Mobile Northeast LLC. As I hope you're aware, T-Mobile is one of the largest telecommunications companies in the United States and actually part of the largest international telecommunications company. We are no stranger to the city of Lowell, having already been in front of this board and the other boards to construct a wireless telecommunications facility. U.S. Wireless is an independent real estate developer that partners up with telecommunications companies and, in often instances, municipalities to site telecommunications facilities in a most appropriate manner. We are here tonight seeking site plan review or site plan approval for a proposed telecommunications facility at 363 Boston Road. As a bit of history, as you're aware, T-Mobile was in front of the planning board approximately 2 years ago seeking permission to build a facility on Gorham Street, which was the first iteration of an attempt to get a facility in this particular neighborhood. Due to some concerns expressed by the planning board, we walked away from that site and entered into discussions with the city of Lowell about locating a facility on the cemetery property on Boston Road. About a year ago, the city actually put out a request for proposals from various telecommunications companies. U.S. Wireless was a successful bidder and has entered into a lease with the city of Lowell to construct this facility on land owned by the city of Lowell. We've worked extensively with the assistant town manager, with the cemetery commission and various other representatives to site the facility on the property in what the city believes is the most appropriate location, subject of course to this planning board and the zoning board's approval for a special permit. We're here tonight seeking site plan approval. We're in front of the zoning board in several weeks seeking a special permit, and we're hoping to get this process to fruition. As a bit of background, and I'm sure you've all heard several telecommunications applications before, but I think it bears repeating, is that we're all using our cell phones. We're using them more and more. One of the things that we have found, both as individual consumers and as representatives in the industry, is that people are using their cell phones more and more as a stationary technology. The statistics are out there. 20% of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts only has a cell phone as their source of telecommunications, and that number is rising rapidly. People are cutting the cord and disengaging themselves from the traditional wired telecommunications network. People are using their cell phones in their homes, in their places of business. Originally, we thought this was going to be a mobile technology and people were going to be using them as they were driving up and down Route 3 and Route 495. But people are using their phones in their homes, in their places of business, in buildings like this. And that use requires a better quality signal, a more reliable signal. The other thing that's really important to note is that as we hear public safety sirens in the background, 50% of the 911 calls that were made last year in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts were made by mobile phones. And telecommunications companies such as T-Mobile work very extensively with public safety to better facilitate that ability to make a 911 call from a particular cell phone. one of the things that T-Mobile is mandated to do under federal guidelines is to be able to better pinpoint where a 911 call is coming from. The example that I use is that my phone is actually registered at my office in Rhode Island. And 5 years ago, if I would have called 911, the 911 operator would have said, "You're in Rhode Island, right?" And that was obviously a flaw in the design. So the federal government mandates that T-Mobile and other telecommunications companies better be able to pinpoint where a call is coming from. So now if I dial 911, the 911 operator will say, "You're on Merrimack Street. In fact, you're in Lowell City Hall, aren't you?" And they can, to a reasonable degree of certainty, pinpoint where that call is coming from. And that technology, that mandate, requires more and more sites and better signal strength. So that's why we're here tonight. We already have several sites in Lowell, in Chelmsford, and in Billerica and the surrounding communities, but we need to do more. The other thing that's happening here is, as you see, our cell phones do more. Before it was just a telecommunications device. Now we can text message and send photographs. We now can surf the internet, and there's things coming in the future that are going to make our cell phones more and more valuable. And again, those technological advances require a better quality signal and more sites. Specifically with respect to the application tonight, we are seeking permission to build a 150-foot facility that will accommodate both the antennas of T-Mobile and provide space for other telecommunications companies as required by the RFP that was issued by the city of Lowell and as a requirement of our lease. One of the things that's happened here is that Lowell wants to get on the game. And we are going to be building a facility that not only accommodates the antennas of T-Mobile, but also other telecommunications companies if and when they come, and we know they will. And our obligation to the city of Lowell increases as we get more and more tenants on the tower. So it's a win-win for both the telecommunications companies, the tower developer, and the city of Lowell. The facility itself is also being designed to accommodate public safety antennas, as we have found that public safety and the traditional public safety forms of communication, police, fire, DPW, other emergency management services, like tall things. And we've actually been in conversation with Mr. Trudeau, who is the head of telecommunications for the public safety entities in the city of Lowell. We've spoken to the DPW, and they have actually expressed their interest in this facility as well. And unfortunately, Mr. Trudeau is tending to a sick family member and couldn't be here tonight, but he intends on submitting a letter evidencing his support for this tower because, again, anything tall will be a benefit to the public safety communications antennas. We do have a letter that we just got today from Ralph Snow, who is the head of the DPW, that I'd like to read into the record, and then I'll submit to Aaron. It basically says, "Dear members of the City of Lowell Planning Board, I respectfully recommend approval of the application for the wireless telecommunications facility at 363 Boston Road. The proposed facility, in addition to hosting commercial wireless communications carriers, will also provide the City of Lowell's Police Department, Fire Department, Public Works Department, and Emergency Operations Center with radio antenna communication equipment attachment space on the tower to facilitate and improve emergency mutual aid and day-to-day communications within the City of Lowell. Sincerely, Ralph Snow." Unfortunately, I have one copy of this, so I'll submit it to Aaron for the record, but I'll get you multiple copies at the next meeting. And like I said, we're getting a letter from Mark Trudeau from the police department, but unfortunately he was not able to do it because he was not available to send it today. But we'll certainly get that for the record. We have had several discussions with planning staff with respect to the application and the application materials and all the technical materials we've submitted. I'm not going to go through the application page by page because it was over an inch thick, but I would like to respond very specifically to the memorandum that planning staff made with respect to the application, and they raised several specific questions. So unless the board had any general questions with respect to facility, I'd rather just address the specific questions addressed by staff.
That's fine, Counsel.
Okay. And I am remiss in introducing, for purposes of moving things along, I'm going to give most of the testimony tonight, but to the extent the questions get too technical for me, I have several representatives of T-Mobile and the tower developer. I have Chris Hesse, who represents US Wireless. I have Dinesh Dasani, who's a radio frequency engineer with T-Mobile. I have Andrew Thompson, who's a real estate specialist with T-Mobile, and I have Jesse Marino, who's a professional engineer who designed the site and has any site-specific questions that you might have. The first issue that was raised by staff in its comments is why a monopole design and why not some alternatives? And we gave that a lot of thought in both where we were putting it and why we were designing it and what we're designing it for. As the city is aware, we have been able to, in certain locations, build facilities that are what we call a unipole design, where all the antennas are inside. It's a little bit more svelte. That represents a compromise and certainly a site-specific solution in certain instances. We believe in this particular instance, however, the traditional monopole design is a more appropriate design for a variety of factors. First and foremost, the reason why we proposed a monopole design is to accommodate public safety antennas. Even though traditional telecommunications companies may be able to put their antennas in what are called an interior mounted facility, public safety antennas can't. It's a whole different type of technology. It's a whole different type of antenna. In layman's terms, a traditional commercial telecommunications antenna is a directional antenna. You always see them in groups of three, one pointing in that direction, one pointing in that direction, and one pointing in that direction. Whereas a public safety antenna, in general, is a omnidirectional antenna. It's a single or a multiple whip-style antenna that projects in a 360-degree direction. So when you put it inside something, the something that you're putting it inside actually becomes a structural impediment to the telecommunications signal. So oftentimes you see public safety antennas on the top of a tower, on the top of a water tank, on the top of a building where there's nothing structurally surrounding it. And so the design that we've proposed, the monopole design, is most accommodating to public safety. We might be able to do something ourselves selfishly, but we wouldn't be able to accommodate the police and the fire and the other DPW and the other types of antennas in the type of facility that the planning staff had suggested. We've been doing this for a long time. We've looked at trees. I'm sure you've seen some tree-type poles in various communities around here. I know there's a couple down on Route 2 and on 495. And we look at things very site-specific, and we just believe that this particular design is the most appropriate design for this particular location. The other thing that staff asked in connection with that comment is why 150 feet? Why not something shorter? And again, it's a very site-specific analysis where what height we need to be at a very specific location. As you're aware, T-Mobile already has several sets of antennas throughout the city of Lowell and the surrounding community. The surrounding communities, Dracut, Billerica, Chelmsford. And the holes that we're trying to fill are getting more and more defined. So we have a lot less latitude than we did previously with respect to location. We were here a couple of years ago proposing a site on Gorham Street, which was much closer to a residential neighborhood and a densely populated residential neighborhood. And quite frankly, that's where we wanted to be. This is becoming a residential service. We want to be closer to the residences, but due to some issues expressed by the planning board and planning staff, we backed off from that. And we went towards, in working with the city of Lowell, we went towards a cemetery property, which is actually farther away from the residences that we want to serve, which therefore dictates that we have to have our antennas a little bit higher. I have some maps here to kind of show that. I'm going to stand at the microphone and talk about this, and then I'll bring this up a little bit closer that you can see it. As you can see from this map, there's two different colors. There's a dark, well, it's actually three colors, a dark green, a light green, and a white. And those three different colors represent the quality of telecommunications signal that T-Mobile currently enjoys in the city of Billerica. The goal is the darker green coverage. And what that represents is the better quality signal, the more reliable signal, what we euphemistically call the in-building coverage. And it's where T-Mobile can reasonably provide a good quality signal without regard to the structural impediments of a building, so if somebody's working in their basement or in their home or in a commercial building like this, you can expect a reasonable, good quality signal. The lighter green is the locations where T-Mobile enjoys what we call a in-vehicle or a lesser quality signal. If you think about it, a car doesn't really provide much of a structural impediment to a telecommunications signal. So, we have pretty decent in-vehicle coverage along Route 3 and in the area surrounding southern Lowell, going towards the Chelmsford border. Route 495. The white represents places where T-Mobile has a less than reliable signal, either in building or in vehicle. And to be honest, we look at things relative to the coverage objective. And like I said, the coverage objective was actually a little bit farther north and west in the residential neighborhood along Gorham Street and in that area, to the east of the cemetery. By pushing us down towards the cemetery, there aren't a lot of people in the cemetery. People in cemeteries don't use cell phones. But by pushing us down that way, which the town has, at least some folks in the city have deemed a more appropriate place to put a cell tower, it requires us to build something of a requisite height to achieve the coverage objective. What this map represents is the coverage that T-Mobile anticipates achieving with the site at 150 feet. And as you can see, it gets great coverage given the topography, given the lack of trees and other impediments to the residential neighborhood along Gorham Street, which is really where we're trying to be and where we're trying to cover. It also provides great coverage into the residential neighborhood to the southwest of the neighborhood, to the cemetery site in Lowell, both in Lowell and the town of Chelmsford. So it really does a great job of providing great in-building coverage for a very substantial part of South Lowell. What we did is we looked at what would happen if we reduced the height of the tower. And what this map represents, and unfortunately we just weren't able to print it out on the same size, but what this map represents is what happens if we reduce the height down to 130 feet. And we have another map showing what happens if we reduce it down to 110 feet. And as you see, the dark green area starts to shrink rapidly, and to a point where it doesn't link up with the other sites that we already have in towards the center of Lowell. And what that means is that by reducing the height here at the cemetery, it increases the likelihood that we'll be pursuing another site in the same neighborhood that we were already told we can't go. So by putting a facility at 150 feet here at the cemetery site, it allows us to achieve the coverage objective and locate it in a place where at least some representatives of the city of Lowell have deemed it more appropriate. And the last thing I have here on the board is an aerial photo showing the lay of the land. As you can see, the facility itself will be located to the south of the cemetery, relatively close to the baseball field along Boston Road. But there's a very substantial tree buffer that surrounds it to the east and south. Trees are our friend. Unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of trees to the north because of the cemetery use to the north, but there's a very substantial tree buffer to the east and south that provides a great buffer for the facility itself. So I'm just going to actually bring this up here and you guys can look at it at your leisure.
Thank you.
The other thing that we had submitted with the application was a visual analysis, and I see there's several copies on the table up there, so I believe the board got it with the application. Actually, it wasn't submitted with the application. It was what we did is we filed the application. I met with the planning staff. We actually put a balloon up in the air at 150 feet. I told staff when it was going to be so that they could take a look at it. And we actually hired engineers to drive around and assess the visibility of this particular facility from several vantage points. And what the engineers did is they drove around and highlighted areas, and mainly public roads, where the tower would be visible and would not be visible. There's no requirement the towers be invisible. They just, we try to work with the city, we try to work with various places to site them in an appropriate manner, but we do the best we can. Unfortunately, they need to be above the tree line in order to have functionality. Above the tree line means they're going to have some visibility from some vantage points, and because the city is telling us to put it near the cemetery property, this has a little bit more visibility because, like I said, there are no trees around the cemetery. But we believe it's actually of limited visibility from some of the closer residential neighborhoods. It does have some visibility along Route 495 from Boston Road, but for the most part, it really is not as visible as actually we thought it would be, given the fact that there's so few trees to the east and north from the cemetery. So what we have here is some before and after photographs, some photographs showing the balloon, and then a photo simulation of what the facility will look like. And we have one taken from Boston Road, just a little bit north of the facility. We have a facility taken from Boston Road, farther down the overpass, down by 495. We've got a facility, some photographs taken from some of the neighborhoods to the east and to the south. And as you can see, it's there. I'm not trying to say that it's invisible, but it's much less visible, certainly from the south and from the west, because of the existing tree buffer. The third part of that main focus of the staff's comments were why not go on existing facilities to avoid the need for building a new facility at the cemetery property. Believe me, if we could go on existing facilities, we would. Building telecommunications facilities are incredibly expensive, incredibly time-consuming, and we have folks like Andrew who drive around all day looking for tall things. And you folks know the city of Lowell better than we do. Down in South Lowell, there really aren't a whole lot of tall things. We've been fortunate in downtown Lowell. There's been several rooftops. In some of the more industrial parts of Lowell, we've been able to use smokestacks. We have built a few towers in Lowell, but for the most part, we've been able to utilize existing structures. And as you've seen throughout the Commonwealth, the industry, and certainly T-Mobile, has been very creative with using tall structures, church steeples, utility poles, water tanks, and anything tall we look at, we've been very creative about attaching antennas to, and if we can, we do, and we will. But in this particular instance, there's really nothing tall in that South Lowell area. We've already got antennas on all of the tall buildings to the north, closer to downtown Lowell. We've got some smokestacks along the, again, south of downtown, but farther north than this particular location. There's the Crossroads building at the intersection of 3 and 495 that we have some antennas on. And so that really shows that we've been very useful of the tall things in town. Staff asked us to specifically look at a couple of facilities that are existing just to the northwest. There was one on let's get the street names right. There's a tower on Washer Street and then another tower on Bolt Street. They're essentially right next to each other, but two separate towers, one a little bit taller than the other. And early on in the process, we did look at them. We did do lots of analysis to see whether we could use them. But again, because we're trying to be farther south to the Gorham Street area and along the southern border of Lowell, the engineers very early on determined that those facilities would not achieve the coverage objective, and it would be duplicative of other sites that are already on air, enjoyed by T-Mobile. And what I have here, and I'll just submit to Aaron, we just did these up this morning in response to staff comments, were coverage maps showing the coverage that we would be able to get if we were able to use the towers on Washer Street or on Bolt Street. And I could bore you with like technical detail, but it really, they're just too close to what we already have and not at all near where we need to be. And I believe staff, raised legitimate questions. Why not? But in this instance, we can't. At this point, I'm going to take a little break and ask if there are any questions. And the reason is because I felt like staff's comments broke down into two different categories. Technical categories with respect to the need to the facility, the design of the facility, the height of the facility, whether there are alternatives, and then a second set of questions regarding site-specific things, drainage, fencing, plantings, and stuff. But I just wanted to kind of see if the board had any questions with respect to design, location, height that we should address before we move on to those other details.
I don't have any at this time. Any board members have any questions, or do you want to move on in regards to the site-specific?
Withhold until,
Okay. We go to the site-specific, if you could, counsel, please.
What's that?
We can move on to the
Okay.
site-specific areas, and if we have any questions on the towers, we'll get back to you on that.
The board asked for, I'm not sure if it asked for any kind of clarification with respect to the fencing. We are not proposing any barbed wire. We would put just chain link fencing around it, surrounded by arborvitaes to just kind of mitigate the impact of the chain link fencing. The facility itself is non-climbable. We understand that it's relatively close to a recreational facility, and we're conscious of that. But the way these monopole facilities are designed, there are no climbing pegs on site, so it's really just a pole. And any licensed climber or any authorized climber who comes to the facility brings their own set of climbing pegs, so that anyone who's inside the compound unauthorized does not have the ability to climb the pole. We're very conscious of that from a safety standpoint. In addition, we understand that being so close to the recreational facility, barbed wire wouldn't be appropriate. We're not proposing that at all. If the board isn't so inclined to chain link fencing, we could talk about alternative fencing, but to be honest, that's just a detail that really doesn't matter to us. So we're quite confident that it's going to be secure with whatever fencing we put around it. The issue with respect to plantings, we had proposed putting some arborvitaes along the fence line to the south and east of the property, because that's closest to Boston Road. We weren't proposing putting anything in back because, quite frankly, there's a pretty dense tree buffer, hundreds of feet from the residential and the other uses to the west. So we weren't really proposing any more. One of the issues that staff raised is that there's a transformer, an electrical transformer. It's a small transformer box that sits outside of the fencing. And unfortunately, that's a requirement that the electric company imposes upon us. We can't put the transformer inside the fencing. They need unfettered access to it. We can put some plantings around it or something to screen it, but unfortunately, we can't put it inside the fence. So we can actually, if the board were so inclined to just condition that we put some plantings around the transformer, we could certainly agree to that. The staff asked for some clarification with respect to the drainage and stormwater flow. These facilities in general don't create a significant amount of impervious surface. The tower will have a foundation. The telecommunications equipment will have some small foundations, but the majority of the compound will just be crushed stone. So we don't really have much issue with stormwater runoff or anything like that. However, the engineers, as was shown on the plans, have put in some retention, I'm not sure what they're called, in some infiltration trenches just to the north of the facility, because that's the way the groundwater would flow in the event that there was any stormwater runoff from our site. So there's already some infiltration trenches drawn on the plans to prevent any stormwater that might come off our facility from traveling beyond our facility into the parking lot. In addition, we had proposed building a small swale. It's referred to on the plans as a grass-lined swale to the south and west of the property, because that's generally the way the groundwater flows from southwest to northeast, to prevent stormwater from actually running through our facility. We don't anticipate that there's going to be much at all, because the grading there is actually quite level. However, just to make sure, because we don't want stormwater flowing through the compound, which might impact the electronic equipment, we've proposed a swale to divert water around the compound. The other issue that the staff raised was impact on wetlands. We had submitted the plans prior to our being able to do a wetlands delineation because there was so much snow on the property, as you probably recall from this winter. Subsequent to our submitting the application, we retained a wetlands biologist to go back and flag the facility to make sure that we weren't either in a designated wetlands or within a buffer zone. And we've revised the plans. You don't have them because I didn't make copies for the board, but I submitted them to staff showing the wetlands delineation. In addition, In addition, I have here the report that we got from our wetlands biologist that I'll give to the staff and to the board that just shows the delineation methods that they used. We don't just draw lines on the maps. We hire wetlands biologists to make sure that we aren't in a designated wetland or a buffer zone. And we're quite confident that we're several hundred feet from the nearest vegetated wetland, so that there's no impact on any wetlands in the area. And the last kind of site-specific issue that the board raised, that the staff raised, was with respect to erosion and sediment control. We will certainly provide, for the benefit of the building department, a erosion and sediment control plan. We didn't include this on this set of drawings because we wanted to make sure the location was finite before we did that level of detail, but we can certainly provide that, and we would agree to a condition that we provide an erosion and sediment control plan to staff or to the building department prior to getting a building permit. And I guess the last thing that staff raised with respect to the facility itself is that the board condition any approval on a specific commitment for co-location of co-applicants. And that certainly would be the case. The owner of this tower is actually US Wireless, who is an independent real estate developer who is as equally concerned as anybody with co-location. It's a commercial facility that it rents out. So we would certainly agree to a condition like that. In addition, our lease agreement with the city of Lowell requires us to pay more rent if and when we get co-locators. So it's in the city of Lowell's best interest as well that we get more tenants. So we're kind of partners in this venture, and we would certainly agree to a condition in that regard. That, I believe, is all of staff's comments. I hope I addressed them to your satisfaction. I hope I didn't bore you. If you, like I said, if you have technical questions, I have various radio frequency or civil engineers here to answer them in more detail, and we would welcome any other questions the board might have with respect to our facility.
Thank you, Counsel. I know earlier you indicated that you'll be doing most of the talking for the applicant. Does anybody else on your behalf want to speak before I open up to the public?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, I will open the meeting up to the public. Before I do that, I did receive one letter, which I'll lead into record. It is to whom it may concern. I have some questions and concerns about the proposed cell tower on Boston Road, and am unable to make the meeting. It looks like there's a laundry list of questions, so I'll just read the questions. Is it necessary to install a tower too close to so many residents of both Chelmsford and Lowell? Is there a more industrial location that would benefit our cell service and be further away from so many homes and young families? I understand the risk of being close to cell towers is not fully understood, but has this possibility been examined at all by your planning board? Is this site being considered because of its proximity to Chelmsford as opposed to Lowell abutters? Is that right? Is there a bylaw or guideline that states that these structures be more than 500 feet away from residents? Are we cutting that close? Please consider these comments from the residents who will be so close to your construction. I appreciate your feedback and consideration to these issues. This is signed by Karen St. George, 36 Robert Bigelow Street, Chelmsford, Mass. At this point in time, I'll hear from anybody who would like to speak in favor of the project. Anybody in the public want to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. At this point in time, I'll open up anybody like to speak in opposition? Anybody like to speak in opposition? If so, just come to the microphone and please give us your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
Hi, my name is Gay Rinker. I'm from Woodland Park Condos. We have a petition of opponents. There's 41 of us so far. It took 6 days to get this. Primarily, we object to the zoning. This is zoning for families, residential, so we'd like to keep it that way. And would you like this?
If you'd like to submit it, you should go ahead, sure.
Okay. So
Thank you, sir.
we just feel like the zoning is family and residential, and we don't know why you can't go to an industrial part. There's plenty in the city. We need to maintain the integrity of our neighborhood.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. You state your name and record for the address,
My
please.
name is Dave Ronow. I'm also at Woodland Park. I'd like to know how we got so far along in this process without any of the members of the community being a part of it. Where are we in the decision-making process?
That's what tonight's hearing's for.
I'm sorry?
That's what tonight's hearing is
Well,
for.
where are we now? I mean, we seem as though, we're talking about, it's almost as though we're building this tomorrow. And this was really sprung on us, taking us all by surprise. And as I understand it, this has been going on a year now, and it's all a surprise to us.
Well, the first I found out about myself was less than a month ago, to be honest with you. So we just find out when it gets advertised in the paper and when it shows up on our agenda. So any communication that any applicant has with the city of Lowell, people in the neighborhood,
So didn't the city of Lowell solicit bids?
I guess so, but that's not us.
That's not your
Not us at all,
department.
nope. Also, what I understand,
I guess we need to know what the process is here. I mean, we're all in the dark. All of a sudden, we're hearing about a 150-foot tower
Right.
going up in our backyards.
right, that's the issue that's before us, right.
That's a bit much. That's as big as the Cross Point building.
Well, I don't think it's that high.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it's quite that height.
It's that tall.
I don't think so, sir. I was here when we built Cross Point.
Is a
It's not.
15-story tower. Well, it's close.
Cross Point's a lot higher.
Very close, isn't it?
I mean, they land helicopters on top of Cross Point,
Cross Point is a 15-story building,
at least.
10 feet per story.
I'd say
If I
it's
do
more
the
than that.
math, that's 150 feet.
I think it's more than that, but,
Yeah, okay. That's about all I have to say.
okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in opposition?
Hello, my name's Dan Cresson from Chelmsford. I wanted to state my first just disapproval of this project. I'd like to vote in opposition to it. I'd also like to address some of the issues that I forget your name, Mr. Parisi, mentioned. He tried to sell this as a public safety venture, citing that many people no longer have landlines, they have only their cell phone, and so by increasing coverage, it increases their public safety. I'd like to point out that you don't need additional towers to pinpoint locations. Pretty much every cell phone sold today has a GPS locator inside. You can disable that for general use, but if you make a 911 call, that automatically gets enabled. Also, those people that do have only cell phones, they typically also have cable or, say, Verizon Fios, which provides them a hard line back into the old school telecommunications network via VoIP. Those technologies are all battery backed, so in the case of a power outage, they still provide service for like 7 days. So he also mentioned that this project was previously proposed at a Gorham Street location, which he claimed himself was closer to the desired customers they're trying to reach. That proposal failed for, I'm guessing, either the people voted against it or there were health concerns about it, I'd like to point out that these people here are all also against it. We are further away from their desired customers. We are not their desired customers. None of us want this. And it's actually closer, I believe, to many households that are also concerned about health implications from a tower this close. I'd also like to point out the proximity to the baseball fields, which I drive past them every day on my way home from work, and there are always numerous kids either playing a game or two games at once. There's two fields there, or practicing dad and son, playing catch. This is, literally right next to the ball fields. So all of these kids will be exposed daily to the immense electromagnetic radiation emitted from the towers. The initial proposal is for 9 antennas, and Mr. Parisi has himself pointed out that the goal is to add additional antennas over the course of time. All that does is increase the electromagnetic radiation being emitted from it and increase the health risks and all of that. So I just once again like to voice my opposition to this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Richard Tedesco. I'm also a member of the Woodland Park Townhome community. I'd like to express my opposition to the planning of this cell tower. A few points I wrote down while Mr. Parisi was speaking. I'd like to bring up a few points. And that gentleman that just left stated one clear thing. We have about 150 residents in Woodland Park, and I'd like not to be an experiment 20 years down the line to find out that we all got some form of cancer from the RF radiation that is going to be from this tower that is going to be constantly on and constantly in service. That point aside, another point I'd like to address is when the power does go out, power will fail. There is in the plans that I was able to read in the short time that this notice was made available to me, the fact that a backup generator is a backup generator planned, if I may address the technical side. No backup generator. So
you can ask your questions to the board, and we'll address them to them if you would, please.
Okay. I don't know if a backup generator is planned, if it's just on backup batteries. If a backup generator is planned, when the power does go out, where is the fuel going to be stored? How is the fuel going to be safely stored? And the fumes from the generator, if there is a generator, how is that going to be addressed to the close proximity to 150 residents of Woodland Park? He spoke also of the technical superiority of having height. 150, he talked about 150-foot tower, and going lower wouldn't be advisable. I read the 74-page proposal that is online, and they didn't address in a 5-mile radius, which is a requirement, all of the alternative sites. He mentioned a few, but he didn't go into detail as to why the Gorham Street site was originally the site, but then it went away, and now this site is the site. We didn't get any detail as to why that site was not chosen. There's also an alternative site on Pleasant Street in Chelmsford along Boston Road. It turns into Carlisle Street. It's a water tower. Now, the water tower is not owned by the town of Chelmsford. It's owned by a group of residents. They were not approached as to, can we put a tower up there? That tower is higher than the proposed tower. He went into detail as to cross-point towers. Are you telling me, ask the RF engineer, that's less than a mile than from the Woodland Park townhouse? That will not fill the gap, the supposed gap in the coverage that this is supposed to fill? Cross-point Towers is a big tower. I'm sure another 9 antennas in a triangular formation would be perfect at that location. He didn't quite go into why that is not a proposed site. I don't know. That was not addressed. The other area that he went into was the areas of Woodland, not Woodland Park, but the wetlands. Okay, we have a stream, or a little streamlet that goes along our property line. It splits, actually, it divides our property between the Swan Street residents and the Woodland Park residents. If you put this massive 5,000 square foot building on our property, how are we to, what is in our planning for the likelihood of our cellars, because the water gets diverted going into our cellars? And I, as a resident at 346 Woodland Park, 20 Woodland Drive, unit number 346, that puts it, if you go to Google Maps, literally in my backyard, on my block of homes. So if I get flooded 5 years down the line, and it's determined it's the cell site, what is my recourse? Got to live with it? Can't sell the house? So I have stated a few, I'm not a public speaker. I have stated a few concerns I have. I've also been informed that the fire department of Lowell, while in the future, there is no problem now that I see in coverage that the fire department has addressed, they have issues as far as getting to the place and protecting the place from a fire. Right now, as I understand it, there's just going to be a walkway from Boston Road. I don't want to address them, I'll address you. What is our protection should something, an anomaly happen? Again, in my backyard. The other issue I have is the sighting of the monopole, the color of the monopole is just a moot point to me. I am not avert, and I'll state this, I'm not avert to having cell towers put up. But he stated that because of the growing use of cell phones and the ever-burgeoning cell phones, what he is alluding to is every mile, everyone's backyard, sooner or later, they're going to say, we need to fill in a gap, we need to fill in a gap, we need to fill in a gap. The question I have to the board is, why was 363 chosen as the site? No other site was chosen as an alternative site, aside from the one that they said they walked away from. We don't know why. There are alternatives, and I don't believe that they stated why this site is the primary site. The other issue was that they did not come and say, we need to put up a site to fill in the gap. The city put out an RFP, and they responded to the RFP. So as far as gaps and filling in gaps and needed gaps, I think it's backwards. They responded to an RFP. And then they went out and floated a balloon and said, this is the site we want to put it up on. And the city so far has agreed. There's already materials ready to be built on that site. There's already a leasing agreement on that, for this site. We found out about this about a month ago when someone was driving by and saw a balloon and inquired, what's a balloon doing up there? So how far along in the planning has this been? I have a record back in October of 10 that a site was put up on the waste facility at Duck Island, and another site at 1313 Gorham Street, which was inadvertently misread as 1375 Gorham Street. I don't know if that is the same site that he refers to that was not appropriate. My point is there are other sites available in business districts far away from residential areas, 400, 500, 600 feet from any person that could be chosen. Why this particular site, in particular in my backyard? I'll be able to see that. I'll be able to hear the thing humming on a nice summer night. Why was that site chosen, aside from all the others that they had available to them? These are the issues that I'd like, to find out, to have answered. I don't know. From what I've read, they didn't explain that. Why 363 Boston Road was the perfect site. It wasn't explained where other sites are available. Aside from children playing in the ballpark, aside from residents having to be bombarded daily, aside from the safety issues, aside from the wetlands issues, I just say that I'm opposed because those questions were not adequately answered to my satisfaction tonight. I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ken Harkins, 110 Bigelow Street. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. I guess I'm against it because this is traditional single-family home. When the city acquired it and took it over, it was supposedly going to be used for the cemetery. They turned around and turned it into a community tree farm with the Boy Scouts and said it would not be developed, and now we're going to develop it. What happens to those trees that those kids planted there as a Boy Scout project? Is it going to be gone in a chase of money? The other thing is AT&T going to honor this agreement when they take over T-Mobile. And he wanted to make it sound like it was very community-orientated and giving us something for nothing when he talked about E911. But every time I open my phone bill, I'm paying for it. Every ratepayer in this room pays for that. So it's not a service that they give you for free. They provide it because we pay for it. And my other question is, how many other companies are they going to put on this tower? They're starting off with maybe their own, and AT&T is going to be putting their stuff up there when they take over T-Mobile. How many other companies are going to go on there? And then I want to know, how much they're going to pay the city for this, because they're going to turn around if they're going to put the DPW and all the others on there. I can guarantee you on the bottom line they're going to charge us for it. So I'd like to know if we're going to make money on it or if we're going to subsidize them. And they mentioned that they have Crosspoint. They have cells on top of there. I'm in direct line with where they're going to build it. It's 1.25 miles from where that tower is going to go to Crosspoint. I'm not an expert anymore. But I just wonder, because I used to install switches and we used to upgrade them switches for them, and I built 2 switches for the company that's going to build this one. With the technology we have, they can upgrade Cross Point. There's really no need that I can see for them to put another tower in there, except that they want to make some green stuff called money. You paid people to go around and look and see if they could see this balloon. It was an ugly balloon, but you didn't come and ask the neighbors or the abutters or anyone else. You just went out and did it. Then you come out and you say, oh, we want to change the zoning. If we change this zoning from traditional single family, it's going to make it easier for someone else to walk in on Bigelow Street and develop that land, because they're going to say the zoning board said it was all right because the city wanted to make money. To heck with the neighborhoods. We'll take the money and run. They can sing, they can dance, they can cry in their own beer, because we're going to take the money. That's tearing the neighborhood apart. It's a nice neighborhood. We don't need a tower there that's going to take away from the value of our houses, the quality of our life, and endanger our kids or our grandkids. And they're not addressing any of these issues. They're talking about pie in the sky stuff. They're not talking about cold, hard facts. All they want is to make it sound nice and rosy, and don't anybody take off those rose-colored glasses and look behind it. Because if you do, you're going to find out they haven't really covered any of the issues that any people have raised here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Hello, my name is Lynn Koltukian, and I have a couple of questions for the board. Thank you, first of all, for letting us have this opportunity to voice our thoughts and opinions. First of all, if the board may educate me as to the definition of a traditional single-family zone. I just want to learn about what that is. What does that mean?
Now, do you want to answer that? Basically, it's single-family houses. I mean, this is not a home where they're going to be put in multifamily houses. Under our zoning, this is allowed in the zoning, correct?
Yeah, to answer your question, Chairman, the telecommunication towers are allowed with a special permit in every district in the city.
So under our zoning, they're allowed to go into any area because it's not a multifamily home. So in a single-family home, a tower could go in if it meets the approval of the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. Mm-hmm. So what they have for request is, one, they have to satisfy us for the site plan. The site plan that we look at is what's on the site, and basically, you know, we can look at the height and everything else, but mostly on the height, that has to go before the zoning board of appeals. Only thing that our bylaws state is it cannot exceed 199 feet. Mm-hmm. And it talks about co-locations on towers, and our zoning ordinance requests that people put co-location on towers to minimize the amount that we have in the cities. So one of the questions that came up that the council parties answered from the planning staff was, would they be willing to put the co-locations on the towers? And they requested that we address that issue to see if they would do so to minimize the amount of towers that go up, so if they want to put the co-antennas on them. So in our bylaws, we request that they allow the co-antennas to go on one tower to minimize the amount of towers built in the city. So for single-family residents, to answer your question, it's single-family homes. This is not a home that's going to be a multifamily home. So do they have a right to put it in this type of zoning area by our bylaws? Yes. Mm-hmm. So the question is now they have to satisfy two things. Like any homeowner or any person who owns a piece of property in the city wants to come in, they have a right to develop their property as long as it meets certain criteria by the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. So in this here for site plan, we have all the plans come in, a copy goes to the city engineer's office, the fire department, the police department, the health department, conservation if necessary, and council approved to us tonight that does not fall into conservation because that issue was addressed by our planning staff, and he has a letter from certified, saying it doesn't fall within the areas to meet the wetlands. So all those departments do get a copy of all the plans that we received tonight. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, they make comments back to us. So when council opened tonight, he addressed many of the comments that we received back from, which was done by our associate planners, a couple of them who were present tonight, and these were some of the questions they had. like why should it be 150 feet, what the type of tower, whether it should be a monopole or not, and he wanted to state on other different questions about what type of fence would be around it, what type of plantings would be around it, what type of stormwater flow, what type of grass would be in the area, whether it falls into the wetland. And that is what type of erosion it would be, and whether they would have the co-location on the towers as requested. Because those are matters under site plan review that we're qualified to do. And if not, well, after that, when it goes on to, it'll have to go before the zoning board of appeals as well, regardless of what we do this evening. So it is a two-tier system to put these matters in before the city. So basically, it is acceptable in any of the city zoning areas in the city.
I see.
With approval by site plan and by a special permit by the zoning board of appeals. So to say that it's not in the right zone, technically, anywhere in the city could be in if they meet the criteria. So it's not like they would create a new zone just to put this in.
I see.
So hopefully that answers some of your question.
It does, thank you. It's a bit illogical to me
I mean,
to
it's-
put a
when you see it at first,
150-foot
you
cell
say,
tower,
right.
ugly, noisy,
You say, why do you
potentially.
put a cell fire in a single-family residence area? But
You know, it's very concerning. I'd like to state my official opposition to the tower for my potential health reasons, for being a resident of Woodland Park. There's a 115-unit development right there, as well as the residents of Bigelow Street, as well as the other residents in that little section of Chelmsford that's right next to us as well. They mentioned a very heavy, dense, they made that tree area sound very dense and heavy and a buffer. They use the word buffer. It's not a very heavy, if you see that area, it's not a dense tree buffer at all between the site, the cemetery, and the Woodland Park development. We can see the cemetery, we can see the ball fields, we can see the cemetery from all of our buildings. And those are very spindly trees with minimal branches. And we will be able to see that tower every single day. And our property values will undoubtedly go down, whether cell phone towers are safe or not. I'm sure there's debates about the health risks about cell phone towers, but perception is reality. If any one of us at Woodland Park or the residents of Bigelow try to sell our homes, then, the prospective buyers will look and they will see that ugly, potentially dangerous cell phone tower, and they will say, ooh, what's that? And the realtor will say, well, that's a cell phone tower. And they will say, ooh, we don't want to live here. So, I have health concerns for my own health, living smack dab next to a cell phone tower, and I also have concerns about the property values of my home and everyone in the area. I'm confident that the attorney who spoke this evening would not want a cell phone tower in his backyard. I'm confident that all of you would not want a cell phone tower in your backyard. So he made it sound like there's a cemetery there, so that's a perfect place for a cell phone tower. He forgot to mention all of us. He forgot to mention all of us that live in Woodland Park and Bigelow Drive. So I'm hoping that you put our health and the fact that we're taxpayers and residents of Lowell ahead of the corporate greed of a telecommunications company. That's what this is all about, corporate greed. It's not about public safety. The policemen and firemen can get to us very well, okay? It's all about corporate greed. So I would just like to state that our health and our property values are more important than corporate greed. The executives of T-Mobile, they don't live next to cell phone towers. I'm sure of that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Bill Lunt. I'm 80 Swan Street. I'm also a degreed engineer. I believe that it's technically irresponsible to build a cell phone tower or anything that we don't know the health effects right next to a children's playground. I believe that we wouldn't put a school under power lines because of possible health risks. I believe that's a horrible location. Visually, it's a horrible location, and it does drop our property values quite a bit. Collectively, Woodland Park pays some $300,000 a year in taxes to the city of Lowell, where I guess I would say a low impact on the costs associated with that. There's no plowing of the roads in front of our houses. We have not that many small children in the area that go to schools. I think we have low impact, and you get a pretty good chunk of change out of us. I'm also concerned that if there are issues, where would we receive help? When the city of Lowell flattened the area where the cemetery expansion was, the way the property was developed, 5 acres to 7 acres of watershed runs into Woodland Park. We asked the city of Lowell for help with that, and we were turned down. We've all just had a surcharge and have had to pay thousands of dollars to try to deal with the water that is running down into our property. Now we've got electromagnetic radiation coming in, we've got noise. It's very much opposed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Jim Collins. I'm at 33 Dunstan Road in Chelmsford, Mass. I have some comments I'd like to submit a text copy of to you folks, including a little indication of my residence on the visibility study, which indicates that, from the entire frontage of my property, it was found that the balloon was visible. So I'm definitely visually impacted by this tower. And then I would like to read some of my comments from a copy.
Thank you, sir. Good.
As I mentioned, based on the visibility study and also observations by my wife, who happened to be home when the balloon was aloft, the tower, as proposed, would be visible from almost the entirety of my property. I have the unfortunate advantage of being on a little bit local maxima on Dunstan Road, so I'm above a lot of my neighbors, and so the tower would be visible clearly from almost anywhere standing on my property and certainly looking out the windows of my house. I believe that this unsightly tower would definitely reduce the value of my property. If you ask anyone, given an equivalent piece of property where one has visibility of some unsightly tower and one does not, which one would they prefer? They would certainly prefer the one that does not. And I would imagine it'd be very easy, although I haven't looked into this yet, to get a local realtor to attest that an equivalent property with a visibility of a tower and one with not, the one without the visibility of the tower would be considered more valuable. And I asked the members of the board to consider your own situation. If you had a piece of property that was potentially going to have this tower visible from anywhere on the property, would you, if the power was in your hands, would you go forward with giving permission for this tower to be built? As people have mentioned, the tower, the parcel in question is zoned residential use, and I believe that it should not be used for commercial purposes. I understand that planning boards, including yourself and throughout the whole country, are somewhat at the mercy of some federal laws that mandate seamless and robust cell service, and that there have in fact been boards who were dead set against a tower being built and were powerless to stop it because of this. Though I don't deny that T-Mobile may have some coverage gaps in the area that appears on the existing coverage and Lowell map as provided on the documents on the City of Lowell website, I do deny, and I can prove, as I'm a long-term T-Mobile customer, I've been a T-Mobile customer for many years, that the existing coverage and Lowell map is inaccurate. Okay, my house appears on a section of the map that is indicated to have, that does not have in-building coverage. In fact, I'm actually on a piece of the map that is almost, it claims there's a total gap in coverage. And the reality is, and I invite any one of the board members to come to my residence if you want to observe this, I have 2 different cell phones. Both of them get 4 out of 5 bar coverage from T-Mobile, anywhere in my house. So if T-Mobile's trying to force this into this location based on a gap, I don't think one exists. Further, as some people have noted, there are existing facilities which T-Mobile could utilize. Some of these have been mentioned, such as the towers on Washer and Bolt Street. In the documents, T-Mobile dismisses these merely by saying they do not address the gap in coverage as defined by T-Mobile. And I find this rather self-serving, given that T-Mobile could simply define the gap in coverage, since they're using their own engineers to determine these gaps, in a way such that the only way to satisfy these gaps would be building the tower at 363 Boston Road. To have a really honest analysis here, you would need an independent engineer, not one associated with T-Mobile or U.S. Wireless, to do the study. Otherwise, you're at risk of the outcome of the analysis conveniently fitting the desires of T-Mobile or U.S. Wireless. I'm also concerned that the decision not to use a pre-existing facility is not based on technical reasons, but is more a monetary reason of some sort, such that the long-term costs of leasing from another company like Comcast or Verizon, who maintain existing towers, is more expensive or has less revenue opportunity than leasing a space from the city of Lowell. And if that's the case, then the city of Lowell is being complicit in potentially reducing both Lowell residents and Chelmsford residents' property merely to assure income to the city, and that's very worrisome. Further, experience shows that allowing commercial development in traditional residential locations is dangerous, because it opens an opportunity for other non-commercial, non-residential developments to happen in that space. So we're saying 150-foot tower today, but can we guarantee that in the future we won't have multiple towers at this location, or someday a rebuilt taller tower, which is even more visible? I'd also like to point out that in my looking at some of the documents, there's one document in the site plan, it's page C1. It seems to indicate that Woodland Drive is just a short, cul-de-sac, and which it is not. It's a long road that goes into that condo community. And the implication when I first looked at that was that it has minimal effect on residences there, which it would not. I'd also like to address one point that the attorney for the builders brought up, is that the benefit to this tower would be to the city of Lowell, because we can also put a municipal antenna on top of it. That type of antenna, unlike the cell phone antennas, which sit below the full height of the tower, would actually be sitting above the height of the tower. So this is very concerning to me, because now we're not only talking about a 150-foot tower, we're talking about an antenna sticking out above the tower. So it actually raises the maximum height of the tower plus the antenna, and it becomes even more visible to myself and the neighbors around me. So I strongly oppose this. And I hope that you'll take my comments into your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, ladies and gentlemen, for the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And as I've been listening to it, questions have been raised in my mind. It seems to me that maybe the Conservation Commission may need to take a look at it if there's any deviation from any wetlands, number one. Number two, has any thought been given to with Trend gases located up by Industrial Ave, which is probably about a half a mile away, whether or not that would be suitable for that area. Plus, right now, the city of Lowell is in the middle of doing revisiting the master plan. And I don't believe, in all honesty, this should be discussed until that master plan is done, because I don't honestly believe that this fits in the neighborhood character of what that neighborhood is all about. And finally, has the proponents gone before the neighborhood groups, the Sacred Heart neighborhood and the Riverside neighborhood group, to get their input? And I don't know if they have or not. But all these questions need to be addressed, and I ask that the planning board postpone any action until some of these issues are addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman.
Good evening. My name is Susan Bogrowski. I live Woodland Park. A couple issues I'd like to address that concern me is that I've viewed all the documents online at City of Lowell's website, and I've looked at one section that had, they did their balloon test, and it seems like all their pictures and balloon test sites were conveniently missing any views from the Woodland Park area, meaning Swan Street or any section of Woodland Park, because of the fact that any resident at Woodland Park steps outside of their door would be able to see this tower. But unfortunately, that particular site or view was missed from their group of people taking photos that day. The other thing that I'm not an expert in this field, just a few of the questions that I have. One thing that was mentioned in one of the documents, or several of the documents that I reviewed, there was a mention of there should be documentation or information regarding any towers in the 5-mile radius. It doesn't say just on the Lowell side border, it says 5-mile radius, so I assume that includes the towns of Chelmsford, Billerica, from the point of 363 Boston Road. I don't think they provided enough information regarding all the cell towers within that particular radius, so I think that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely. Obviously, Cross Point Tower is probably the highest point in our area right now, and I agree, that should be looked at as well, that either they put additional poles up there or make modifications to what is existing up there right now. The other point I want to make is, my concern is the actual site plan for what they're saying. They're putting in a 3,000 square foot, I assume, a cement pad. But what from the gentleman mentioned earlier this evening, I heard some crushed stone. So I think we need to get a little bit more information on exactly what that construction site will be. You know, solid concrete versus crushed stone. Reason why I'm discussing this because of the fact that there's also information in there, the documents, that there is there is wetlands area very close to the site, and I think they're closer than they're admitting to. And information on, they had a wetlands expert noted on the documents that I viewed online, was supposed to submit information. I guess that information was only available tonight. So that needs to be reviewed, I think, by the City of Lowell's Conservation Commission, to take a look at that and actually see the the data that was put in that particular report and whatever they're using as footage from the site to the actual wetlands area. Because of the fact that the wetlands area is in Woodland Park's backyard, that water flow in that particular wetlands area goes right through our property. So back to the site plan that they have, if they have more cement pad versus crushed stone, that stormwater flow is going to be eventually going into the wetlands area and again, eventually coming through Woodland Park. We have enough problems with water in Woodland Park right now. We don't need added water problems because of the fact that this plan, if they put in a 3,000 square foot cement pad, is going to, occupy quite a bit of soil that water would normally drain into, as opposed to now running through conservation land, which in turn goes through Woodland Park. So I think that our Conservation Commission definitely should be involved with this particular site. There was also mention that they're concerned about their electronics on their particular tower, that they're going to install a swale to keep the water from flowing into the tower area. And where is that water going to go? Into the conservation land, which in turn goes through Woodland Park. So I definitely, a review needs to be done on their plans on water and water drainage and the conservation land, that it's very, very, very close. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is George Brooks. I live at 78 Swan Street, Unit 212 in Woodland Park. My unit abuts the cemetery. My first concern about the cell tower is that it will cause property values to go down. Even though many of the complaints about health problems haven't been proven, people won't want to take the risk. It will be clearly seen from my property. I've never known any of these towers not to hiss, hum, or buzz. And if you're trying to show a place with one of those going in the background, people are not going to be interested in your property. Second of all, I'm very concerned about the 3,000 square foot cement pad that's going to be put down there. Before the cemetery, there was very little flooding at Woodland Park. We had a forested area. The trees soaked up a lot of the rain that came through. And especially in the spring when we'd have the heavy melts. Now that the cemetery is there and there are fewer trees, the ground will often freeze up, the water will run over it, and we have water in our basements. Matter of fact, the groundwater will become so saturated it will come right up through the cement. We put in an expensive drainage system this year, and I'm not satisfied that the drainage system that they propose is going to do anything more than add more water to that groundwater, especially with less trees. Finally, the location of it bothers me, next to a cemetery. The cemetery is located next to Edson, which is right across the street from it, is a historical site. Buried within that cemetery are Revolutionary War soldiers and soldiers from every war we have had in this country. We also have a statue to Chief Pennacook, who was the leader, the chief of the Pennacooks. I can't pronounce his name. I think it was ASPQUID, Espinquad, who helped the white men here in this area greatly. He is not buried there, but his statue is a draw. It brings people in. I know from experience, my grandmother, driving through here 30 years ago, wanted to stop and see that statue and read about him, a man who'd lived 122 years and had been a great help to this community starting. Also, at another end of the cemetery, there is the grave of Jack Kerouac, almost directly across from this, what's going to be a very ugly-looking cell phone tower. The tower in the pictures doesn't look as obtrusive as it's going to be eventually. We've already heard that there are going to be more antennas on it, and that's going to make it even uglier. Also, the people who come to that cemetery, why do people come to a cemetery? They come to have a peaceful, quiet moment to say goodbye. That tower is a horror show, as far as I'm concerned, and doesn't belong in a cemetery. It should be a peaceful, quiet place, a beautiful place, as best as we can keep it. It's bad enough now that the Swan Street is used as a cut-through to avoid a lot of the traffic on the 495. Finally, I just want to leave you with this. Benjamin Franklin said you could tell a lot about a community by the way they treated their dead. He, in fact, insisted that you could go to a cemetery and know everything about the community by the way they treated the dead. And I think something that ugly in a historical site is an affront to the community. It says a total disregard for our history, for our people, and for the people who are trying to make it a livable community. And I hope this board will vote against that tower. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Robin Cresson. I live at 5 Manning Road in Chelmsford. And I really can't say anything more than my friends and neighbors have so passionately said tonight. But I just wanted to go on record saying that I disapprove of this project from the bottom of my heart. There are young families in this area, and we don't know the health effects from these towers. Why would we subject our children to this? I think it's outrageous that we are going to be putting this, or planning on putting this, in a community with young families. It breaks my heart. And aside from the health risks, again, many of my friends and neighbors have said home values. This economy has done enough to our home values. There's no way we're going to be able to sell our houses with a cell tower there. And again, I think someone else brought up, if we make this exception, what other exceptions are we going to be making in the future? I mean, there's that wooded lot right there. I can just see a convenience store going up there in a few months. I didn't buy a house thinking that there would be a convenience store there. I bought a house thinking there would be a nice wooded area there. And another thing that nobody's brought up, but I'm kind of concerned about, is how will this interfere with our television reception, with our radio reception? I mean, not everybody has cable, not everybody has dish. There are people that still have antennas. Will this interfere with that at all? I realize there are different frequencies, but I believe that if you're close enough, there will be interference. I mean, are the people that don't have cable or dish now going to have to run out and pay $70, $80 a month for Comcast? I mean, the economy is hard enough on people. We can't expect them to eat up these extra costs. So again, I just wanted to go on record saying that I really, really disapprove of this project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Snook, and I live at Woodland Park, and my unit is 361. I've lived there for 21 and a half years. I've seen lots of changes in the neighborhood, the cemetery being one, and I've seen the effect in my own basement, as well as my friends, with the water that has come in because of the changing of the complexion of that area. So I can't imagine a tower going in that's 150 feet high with a 3,000-foot base would not affect in some way that configuration of land once more. We at Woodland Park, I must say, I'm very proud of our little community. We do not, as it has said before, we don't cost the city of Lowell a lot of money because we have our trash collected privately. We recycle like good stewards, and we have our own snowplow company that comes in and snowplows for us. So we don't cost Lowell a lot of money, and yet we're very proud of Lowell. We're proud to be a part of Lowell. We're proud to be a part of this city. I am concerned about the value. I've certainly, in my 21 and a half years, have seen the value of Woodland Park fluctuate dramatically. And I can tell you that if I was a young mother coming into the community and looking for a home, I would not choose this area if this was something that was going to be something that would be visibly seen and might at some point in time affect the health of my family. So I am opposed to this, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope it's not uncouth to speak twice.
Well, can I wait to see if anybody else wants to speak first?
I look
Anybody
around.
else want to speak?
Anyone?
Prior to this gentleman going second?
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I wanted to follow up.
Could you state your name for the record again, please?
Sorry, Dan Cresson, 5 Manning Road, Chelmsford. I wanted to follow up on some of the questions that were actually asked to the board and get some clarification. This is my first foray with local government, and so I was wondering, the purpose of this board almost sounds like it's a technical decision. Like if this plan doesn't encroach in the wetlands, then you will approve it. And so I'm wondering what the impact of our comments tonight are on the board, if it's, a substantial part of your decision-making process. What other avenues are there that we can express our concerns? Clearly there are many. And what future meetings will be held on this? Will we be notified like we were for this one? Basically how can we follow up and remain informed?
Well, notification is definitely done by what's known by our city regulations, too. They have to advertise it in the paper.
Okay.
Twice, and prior to tonight's meeting. So notification usually goes out by advertisement, and sometimes on this, did we do a butters list on this, Aaron, as well?
That's correct. For both the site plan review and special permit, the zoning board of appeals, it follows Mass General Law 48. It's 300 feet from the parcel boundary.
So anybody who falls within a certain area of radius gets notified by certified mail.
Okay.
Okay. So that's for public hearing. All public hearings have to be notified in advance. We actually put a sign up here in the city as well, which came down under the new Attorney General's bylaws as of last year. Any work that any applicant wants to do about looking into criteria in the city, they don't have to tell the planning board anything. They can carry on negotiations with anybody in the city of Lowell to lease an agreement and everything else. Nothing comes before us. We're not privy to that communication. We know nothing about that communication until everything comes before us this evening. When they submit a copy of a site plan, they have to give us a copy of the plans. As I said earlier, a copy of that has to go to all 7 of the city departments. And all of our department heads have to comment back to us. If we do not receive those plans from those city departments, we as a board cannot vote on the project. If we don't vote on the project within a certain amount of days, then it's deemed accepted, unless the applicant waives the criteria of time that we ask for them to do it. So basically, on a site plan, we have to look at, basically, if it meets the criteria for what is in the best public safety issue, and then therefore, that's why the city engineer comments on it, if they have traffic engineer comments on it, fire comments on it, to see if they get the fire apparatus in there, police comment on it as well, and then they give a comment to conservation, and conservation will check whether they think it fits within their radius or not. If it does, then they have to go for them for what's known as a review of determinability. If they submitted tonight that says it doesn't fall within that criteria, one of the recommendations by our planning staff is that if we vote on this matter, that we do have it considered to go to conservation. Then it would be up to conservation to see whether it falls within the determinability, and if it does, then they would have to hold a public hearing. If they just come out and say it doesn't meet our criteria, then they would not do a public hearing. So under site plan, we have to look to see if it fits in, whether they have the right side yard, rear yard. Usually, cases that we look at would be traffic, where they're saying to us, and they have to give us a narrative. And I know if some of you read it, but I know I have to read it, but I had to read through all of this, so I read most of it, and I understood, and some of it I didn't, and some I go back, and there's certain criteria. And the applicant was pretty good about it, because every question that we have in our site plan book, what they did was they cited chapter 764, and every time they put our rule in, they proposed their answer. So it saves us as planning board members, instead of running back and forth from a book to here, is what their guidelines are. And that's how, when they talked about, when we got back to earlier about the co-location on the poles and what that criteria is for that, and where they can be within the, what type of zoning area, which planning and development told us, and within our regulations, it can go into anywhere in the city if it meets our site plan approval and zoning board of appeals. So basically, for the public hearing comes up, the applicant's supposed to propose their case, and then the people who are against it, instead of asking us questions, because we're not the applicant, we're not the ones who's putting this proposal out here. All this stuff is new to us tonight, same as yourself. Sometimes applicants do meet with neighborhood associations, and a lot of times the neighborhood knows more about the application process before we do. So we don't meet ahead of time, because that's in violation of open meeting laws. I've never spoke with any of these gentlemen here about any of this matter here. If they, as I said earlier, had an agreement with the RFP to send it out to bid for the city, that has to be done by the city council, the city manager. None of that is contingent upon us. We have no say in that matter. We just have to look at each individual site. As I said earlier, if you are a homeowner and you want to do something on your property, if you met the criteria, say you want to put a fence up, your neighbor says, I don't want it. If you met our criteria, you're entitled to put it up. So when someone comes in under their criteria, we have to look at if they meet our site plan approval. If they don't meet our site plan approval, that's why we can say that we don't approve it. If they meet our site plan approval, for example, if we have a case that we think there's too much traffic in the neighborhood, someone comes in and says, our engineers have looked at it and said this would not increase the traffic, that'd make a detriment to the neighborhood. Then our city engineer gets a copy of that plan too. And if they look at it, and if our city engineer says, we agree with them, and if I sit here as a layperson, as a planning board member, and say, I disagree with both of them, which I've done in the past, we voted against it, they've gone to court, and the court says, the planning board members don't count, because their city engineer and their engineer say that it's acceptable. Even though the planning people don't believe that, the experts say it too. As a result of that, case gets sent back to us, we got it back, and the judge said to us, you can't consider the traffic engineer, because your own people said it had to. So we have to look at not just what our own personal feelings are, whether it's in our backyard, whether it's in anybody's yard in the city, because our job is to take care of what's best in safety, welfare of the people, no matter where it's located in the city of Lowell. We don't each represent a particular neighborhood, we all represent the city. So we have to look at each criteria, even like if it was in our backyard. And whenever time we have a site plan approval, I can assure you, all these planning board members go out and look at that site, at least more than once. And other neighbors who are here from Bigelow Street know we've been out to their neighborhood before to look at other issues, and we do go out. So basically, for the criteria, the hearing is we're supposed to hear what the applicant has to say, which is the best for the project, and what people in opposition are, what they feel would be best against it. And then we have to look to see if it's supported by the cities and towns, by our cities' regulations, by, again, tonight we have comments in here by our city engineer on some of the matters. We've heard comments already from the Division of Planning and Development. Those are two that we've already heard so far. And then the other ones we get it. If we get fire department, when someone puts it in and says, no, it's a safety hazard, we cannot get in there to do a fire thing. Safety, we don't have a fire hydrant, we need this. Then as board members, if that comes to our attention, or they just check off and say, we have no problems with it. So those are all the criteria that we have to look at, and they're all listed out on the site plan approval. Then if it goes on to special permits, there's a whole different ball game, which then it goes before the Board of Appeals. The special permit, we have to consider neighborhood character, we have to consider, you have to get 4 out of the 5 votes, and it has a much stricter stringency to be accepted by the board instead of just by majority vote. So that's a different category. So on this here, it's just a site plan approval, whether they met the criteria to make sure that this site is safe, and those are criteria that we have to look at through all the city departments. And that's why when they get the same copy of all the comments that we have, like here, we have a list of folks who's done from our planning staff. On the back page, we have a list which is done from our city engineer. And these copies also go to the applicant. So when the applicant come in, council, first thing it did, to start addressing some of the issues the planning staff have. So they have an opportunity to look to see what some of their concerns are and how they can address them to make them satisfactory to either the planning staff or to questions that the planning board would have. So basically, they present their case, and people in opposition would present their case under the criteria of the site plan, whether it's good or bad. And they said, I don't like it in my neighborhood, because we see that a lot. So that's what the criteria we have to consider, sir.
Okay, thank you. Are there other avenues that we all can submit our comments to and our opposition? Maybe not to the planning board, but for other stages of the process?
Well, what happened is this requires 2 public hearings, one before ourselves, and the next one will be the zoning board of appeals.
And we'll be notified of that one also? Okay.
And if we know that date now, I can check to see and let you know. Aaron, do you know if this has already been advertised for the zoning board of appeals meeting?
Yes, well, it will be going out tomorrow, so I believe it's May 23rd is the next, for the zoning board public hearing.
So that'll be advertised on May 23rd? Now, if we approve this and we impose conditions, which will on the site plan, we can improve with conditions. If we approve conditions and then it goes before the zoning board of appeals, the zoning board of appeals cannot change our conditions. All they can do is add to it or deny it.
Okay.
So any condition that we oppose, that we put on a conditional approval, if we decide to do something of that nature, those conditions have to stay. Okay?
Great.
If we approve one with conditions that the applicant feels isn't appropriate, then they have relief to take us to court or not. And then they'll get to the court to decide whether our conditions were reasonable, and that's up to the court to decide what's reasonable. So basically, it will be another public hearing if we approve this, and it would go forward, and our conditions would be attached to any of that, and then they could add conditions or not. We've done that in the past where it has a 2-tier system like that, where it has to come before us. So in this place, it has to come before us for the site plan, and all the poles, and even whether you add to the antenna, if you put another antenna on the pole, and the existing ones have to all go before the zoning board of appeals. So if they already had an antenna, a pole up there, I should say, and they want to add an antenna, that has to go before the zoning board of appeals. If they just want to add an antenna on the pole, they wouldn't have to come back before us if the site on the ground was still the same, like the fence around it, the stormwater, the drainage, and if they weren't building any other facilities on the bottom of it and just attaching it to the pole. So that site plan is what our requirement is tonight.
Excuse me, Chairman, I just want to make a correction. The zoning board public hearing for this cell tower is actually May 9th is the time.
When's it?
May 9th.
May 9th, I'm sorry.
Not May 23rd, it's May 9th. It's
So May 9th would be for the zoning board of appeals, where they would consider what's known to be the special permit process. So that would be a public hearing as well. It should be on a Monday night, right?
It's a Monday.
They meet, the Mondays in between us. We meet the 1st and 3rd Monday. They meet the 2nd and the 4th, right here.
Contingent on approval.
Right?
That's
Contingent on
correct.
approval here.
Right.
Correct, yeah. So just to reiterate, the way the zoning ordinance for the city of Lowell, if there's a concurrent decision by the planning board and the zoning board, the planning board decision must come first before the zoning board can.
So under the regulations, they want to come, our guidelines request that we do the site plan before it goes to the zoning board of appeals. So that way it comes before us, before it goes before them.
Right. All right, thank you for your time and your
You're welcome,
explanations.
sir. You're welcome. Okay. Does anybody else want to speak in opposition?
I just have a question. If I wanted to submit more information, would I send it to City Council Chamber, this address?
You'd send it to the Division of Planning and Development, right, and doing this building now instead of across the hall.
That's correct. It's room 51 in City Hall, 375 Merrimack Street. That's for information that would go to either boards.
Same that's on this letter?
That's correct.
So what happens is the planning and development gets all the information in first, and the planning and development, they're our associate planners, so they feed information to us as the planning board. So whenever a situation like this comes up, people say, how long has it been in the planning? Anybody who's going to put some type of plan before us, they always come in and meet with planning and development first. One, most people who've done this for a period of time look to see what guidelines we have and whether their idea would fit. So even if people call you up and say, well, I'm thinking of doing this, what should I do? Down and speak with planning and development. They'll tell you if it fits in that neighborhood, what you can do in that neighborhood, what you have a right to do in that neighborhood, and what is not even allowed in that neighborhood. So, and with the new revamp of the planning departments in the city, which came down by our city manager, we're trying to make it a lot more friendly, accessible. So now all the departments have been moved from the, across the way to this building. So when people come in, they can meet with all the departments at one particular time. So they're trying to, when I met with the assistant city manager, Adam Backey, they said, we want all the departments to be close, and people come in, can stop and ask all these questions in one area. So the main thing is, all that information now is available here at the City Hall. So. Yes, sir.
I spoke earlier tonight. My name is Richard Tedesco, and I live at 20 Woodland Drive, Unit 346. I've gotten a great education on the process involved and what goes on. And from what I understand, it is up to the board to see if they have met the criteria for the planning board. The planning board then gives its okay or denial. If it gives its okay, it goes to the zoning board. And then we have a chance to express our disapproval at the zoning board.
Right.
Okay? And it's a much, I think you stated it's a much tighter
Special permit requirement, correct.
special permit, okay. Questions I have on the siting of the placement of where they want to place it now, okay? They are going to put all the pretty trees and the bushes and the fences around this site, okay? My residence is off of Swan Street. Swan Street is off a street called Industrial Ave. It's called Industrial Ave because there's all industry along that route. I failed to read in the documents as to why a site in an industrial area was not suitable. It's within a half-mile walking distance, so the gap coverage can be addressed. The unsightly aspects of having a cell tower can be addressed because it's already in an industrial park. It's already in an industrial area, so that would be addressed. I failed to see in the 76-page document that they provided to you as to why that site was not better than the site proposed. Second question I want to understand is, if this is a planning board and nothing has been signed and agreed to, why are piece parts already at the site? They did a balloon and they tagged the zoning with flags and posts as to where the proposed 3,000 square foot monument is going to be. If it's in the planning stages and it could be disapproved, why have they placed as though it's a fait accompli already there? They already have the building materials. Just a question I have before the board. Is that to say this is just a formality?
No, I can answer your question if you want me to.
Yes.
Okay, one, before they could even come before us, they'd have to have standing from the city of Lowell to work on that site.
They have to
have standing, it's a legal terminology,
yes,
to put something on that site.
So they've already, so the city of Lowell?
So they would have to, and they showed us that they have an understanding with a lease agreement with the city of Lowell.
So they've already signed a lease agreement?
Okay? That doesn't mean they get to build a tower. We have nothing, I have nothing to do, and I don't sign when they do a lease agreement with the city. I haven't read the lease agreement in detail. A lot of times, same thing if somebody wants to come in and build a development in your property, and you want to sell it to me, and I want to be a developer, I have a purchase and sale agreement that says it's contingent upon being accepted by the planning board. So what their lease may be, and usually if we have a question on that, we refer those to the law department, because we do have 2 lawyers on the board, myself included, but we don't answer questions for the law department, because our law department is held to make those determinations, not our personal opinions. So if the city says, we are going to allow you to go on our property, same as if you said to somebody, you can go on my property and you can tell me what size my fence is going to be, you can excavate my land, you can do this, and you can put out your markers to see if I want to sell it to the guy down the street. Maybe he wants to put a pool in. Let's see if the pool will fit. And you want to let him do it, the city can do the same thing on this piece of land. They can say you can come in, you want to put your balloons up, you want to do your tights, you want to see where the markers are, we'll give you permission to come on and do that. It's our property. That's agreement. Now, the only people who vote on the planning board is us 5 members here. Whether they've had an agreement, whether they put it out to bid in the city council to approve that, it's not binding before us. We have no say in that matter. So if they come in and say, we have a piece of land, we have an agreement with an entity, coming in to see if it can be approved by the planning board. If we approve it, they can go forward. If we deny it, then they could be the end of it, or they could take it to court, or they could, whatever avenue they feel is appropriate. So basically, just to come in and do some work on the site, they would have to have permission of who owns that property to begin with. So I'm guessing it is, what they put in their document is that they had a lease with the city. I didn't read the whole lease, but there's something in here that says, and it was looked at, well, here it is right here, matter of fact. The letter of authorization dated the 8th of March, 2011 provides written authorization to U.S. Wireless, Inc., its attorneys, agents, representatives to apply for any necessary planning board, zoning board, land permits, and it goes on and signed by, this letter to authorization shall not constitute an agreement to enter into a binding agreement, and neither party should be bound with regards to the leasing of the above-mentioned property until a final agreement has become fully executed between the parties. So this is just giving them the right to filing for the building permits required for zoning approval, which are necessary for the leasee's placement of the wireless communications on the property. So this was signed off. We have it signed by our city manager and also by our city solicitor. So they have a piece of paper that says basically they have a right to come in and say that even though the city owns it, that they have a right to apply for the necessary petitions and permits before the planning board.
Right, so in essence, then, the city-owned property that is along Industrial Ave, they could have cited also, and it could have, and it would have met.
Yeah. And basically, you know, when someone comes before us to put a site in, we don't pick to them and say, why'd you pick this one, why'd you pick that one, why'd you pick that one?
Well,
we just have to act on the site that comes in front of us.
My question is, given the two sites, one that is literally in my backyard, but it's within the Woodland Park, the Bigelow Street, the Swan Street residents, 150 taxpayers, or sited in an industrial area where you don't have kids playing, you don't have all of the issues that they are going to have to solve by putting it where they want to put it, why that site was not chosen over 363. And again, they made reference to a site on Boston Road as, well, we looked at it and we walked away from it. Why? It was not explained to us.
It was explained to us because we were the ones at the planning board meeting that night when it happened. They came before us and we voted on that.
And
we voted no.
And were there residents near that area?
Yep.
Okay.
They all spoke. And I can tell you some of the reasons why and some of the reasons weren't, but that's contrary to tonight's proceedings anyways, because that's a whole issue and different set of land. But we had issues in regards to a lot of things. And matter of fact, a lot of people came out that night.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate that there are other sites that they could have chosen.
I totally understand that. I mean, when people come in to build a lot of projects in the city, people always say, why here, why not somewhere else in the city? Well, so we just have to see if it meets the regular criteria. We can't pick and choose, say, go there. So if they select this site, then we have to vote on, under our bylaws, whether it's appropriate. So.
I just want to reiterate that they do have other choices, and they haven't.
Right. And they come before us, the choice is, we can only vote on 363 Boston Road. We don't have the choice to say to them, we want you to go put it up over there. That's way above purview. We have to
Understood. You can either approve or disapprove the site that they are going for.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just saying.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So let me just get back to, does anybody else want to speak in opposition before I turn it over to the board members? Have any questions? Okay. In opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed.
Excuse me. Is it
I'll get to you
possible
in
that I
1
could
second.
just...
Yes, sir?
Is it possible that we could just respond to a few of the issues? There seemed to be an immense amount of confusion and misunderstanding, and I just wanted to...
I was about to ask those right now. Okay. A couple of questions I'm going to start off, just throwing off with the planning board is, Council, I want to let you decide first, and by looking at all the questions I have, a lot of ones that was duplicate in nature was, why'd you pick this site? Cross Point jumps up. The gentleman spoke about the Gorham Street site, which I know we talked about a little bit. One was a tower in Chelmsford, one's on Cross Point. The 5-mile radius, I know you addressed a couple of them in there, so if you could just address that one, I think that's one of the big questions first.
Absolutely. One of the maps that we submitted, and I have the large scale, but I have the small scale right here, showing where T-Mobile currently has antennas. We already have antennas on the roof of Cross Point. And to address the most recent comment, that's very close to Industrial Drive. We're trying to be farther west. And again, we started near Gorham Street, and we're encouraged to go this way by the city, towards farther west, towards the cemetery property.
So, excuse me, on this map then, do these things represent your antenna?
Yeah, exactly. What those maps represent are where we have existing sites. And there's one that just says existing coverage. We have a facility on Cross Point. We have facilities on, we currently have approximately 12 facilities already in the city of Lowell, and that doesn't include the ones in the surrounding towns. And I can provide staff with that list. I actually believe that staff recognized that 5-mile designation was kind of dated in the sense that we have sites 1.5 miles away. So analyzing something 5 miles away is superfluous. We provided data with respect to where we are in the immediate area. And as telecommunications gets more and more prevalent, as we get more and more users, we need more and more sites, and the coverage from each site goes down. So back in 1996, when we first came to Lowell, looking at things on a 5-mile radius was appropriate, but now we're looking at things at a 1-mile radius. And because of where we are already, the latitude that we have to go in different directions is much more limited. There was some questions raised with respect to a water tank in Chelmsford, and I have correspondence here, and I can provide it to the planning staff if necessary. We approached them. They weren't interested in leasing to us, and the reason is I believe they intend on taking that down at some point. We looked at the existing facilities on Wells and on Bolt and Washer Street, and provided data tonight, and I can substantiate that in greater detail if the planning staff requires, that those are redundant with what we already have. And primarily, one of the reasons why we're here is because in working with the town manager and working with, or the assistant town manager, and working with various representatives of the cemetery department, we were kind of told this is the most appropriate location when you look at the big picture. When you look at the fact that one of the other issues that came up, and I believe it came up with the Gorham Street application, is your zoning bylaw has a lot of extensive criteria with respect to siting. One of which is that the facility needs to be set back from the property line a distance equal to the height of the tower. And that, I believe, was a big issue with respect to the Gorham Street facility. In this particular instance, with cooperation of the city, we found a lot that meets that requirement. We are over 200 feet from the nearest property line, and that's actually Boston Road. We're over 400 feet from the nearest used property line, which I believe is the Woodland condominium. And in that 400 feet is a very extensive tree buffer, has been shown by the aerial photos that we submitted. The other thing that we submitted in that regard was a visual analysis. And what the engineers did is when they put the balloon up in the air, is they took random photographs, but they also provided a map that says where it's visible and where it's not visible. And one of the things that's relevant is that it's really not that visible from the Woodland Road and the Woodland Condominium Association because of the trees and because of the buildings themselves. Where you get visibility of these sites is when you don't have anything in front of your face. So it is going to be visible from the cemetery, but the cemetery department was the ones that told us to put it here. It is going to be visible from parts along Boston Road. It's going to be visible from parts of Route 495 because you don't have trees in front of you as you drive down the thoroughfare. But where it's really not visible is from the Woodland Condominium Association area. And from the, we submitted a visual analysis with an engineer certifying where they saw the balloon and where they didn't see the balloon. So that's why we're here. The other thing I think the chairman aptly noted, even though this is a single-family, a traditional single-family zone, telecommunications facilities are permitted in the zone with a special permit from the zoning board, which we've applied for. We're here tonight seeking site plan review, and I believe we've met the requirements for site plan review. There was a couple other what I would call misunderstandings. The compound itself is 3,000 square feet. The fence line will be 50 by 60, and I misstated and said it was going to be a chain link fence. It's going to be a stockade fence. Inside of that is some telecommunications equipment. There are a couple of small, like refrigerator-sized cabinets that sit on a small 5 by 10 concrete pad. The foundation itself for the tower hasn't been designed. We do that on a very site-specific geotechnical analysis. But generally, that's going to be about 20 by 20, 400 square feet. So the total concrete area within that 3,000 square foot compound is going to be about 450 square feet. And our engineers were very conscious, and I can bring up Jesse if you'd like, about the water flow and the stormwater runoff. We have very minimal additional impervious surface, and we're very conscious of that, and have drawn, as shown on the plans, drawn in retention trenches to make sure that the water, if any, doesn't move more than 5 feet from the exterior of the compound. The other thing that came up with respect to noise, we're not proposing any backup generators. These sites are very low-powered facilities. They use standard electrical service. We bring in backup batteries that last anywhere from 12 to 20 hours. If there was a long-term power outage, we'd bring in a temporary generator that would be removed from site as soon as the power came back on. So we're not proposing any permanent generator service, no fuel storage, nothing that would have an impact on the nearby wetlands. The other thing that we're putting it in a place that's already cleared but not being used. It's immediately adjacent to the existing parking lot and the existing access way from Boston Road. So public safety access will be over the existing parking lot that that is on the site. We're putting it away from where the Boy Scouts have the tree farm, so we're not impacting that at all. And this was done with very conscious discussion between various representatives of the city and the cemetery department to make sure that we had as minimal an impact on the site as possible. This is behind the ball field, but using the same access that the ball field has. We believe that, and we have data to support from our wetlands biologists, that we have no issues with respect to stormwater runoff. We have no issues with respect to the impact on the wetlands. And I would certainly agree to a condition that we submit all that data to the Conservation Commission or the Conservation Officer to confirm that. I got the impression that water and stormwater runoff and impact on wetlands was a big concern of the neighbors, and we're quite satisfied, and we can certainly satisfy the Conservation Officer that there will be no impact.
Can I just ask you two questions quickly?
Sure.
I know some people mentioned about the health risk. Can you touch on that? And can you also talk about what your requirements are on the federal government for the FCC when we put these cell towers in?
Yes.
I know you have to meet their criteria as well as any local criteria.
Absolutely.
Can you explain just a little bit of that?
The federal government has licensed T-Mobile and other telecommunications companies to provide this telecommunications service after very extensive studies with respect to the health effects of telecommunications facilities. This technology has been around for over 100 years. The first radio communications came out of Massachusetts over 100 years ago. And it's the same type of technology that we use with public safety antennas and baby monitors, and it's the same type of energy emissions that comes off your computer monitor, radio stations and the like. This is a very low-powered facility, and the reason is because it's designed to communicate a half mile, 3/4, maybe a mile to your cell phone. It's a two-way communication. And these are very low-powered devices because we put them up here when we talk to them. And so it's a low-powered communication going to the antenna, and it's a low-powered communication coming back. We have built literally thousands of these antenna sites in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts over the last 10 years. And as you can imagine, we've put them on everything tall. Every hospital has telecommunications antennas, every tall commercial building. Most church steeples now have antennas in them. I get approached every day by housing authorities. Billerica Housing Authority just called me last week. Will you put antennas on our building? We have put them on other residential structures in the city of Lowell and in all the surrounding communities because people have gotten over the concern that they are detrimental to health. We've put them near other recreational facilities. We've put them near schools. There's actually a thought that if you're really concerned about children, you put the antennas closer to schools. And the reason is because all our children have cell phones now. I have a 10-year-old daughter that lives on her cell phone. And because it's a two-way communication, you want this to be working as low-powered as possible. And it works less, this emits less energy if the antennas are closer. So there's a movement towards putting antennas closer to schools, closer to hospitals, closer to other residential facilities, so that the communication back with our cell phones is less powered. And that's the pleasant answer. As this board is aware, and I'm sure you've heard before, the federal government has deemed these facilities safe. They have extensive regulations with respect to power output and respect to frequencies to mitigate interference and to mitigate other concerns with respect to the safety. And our license requires us to operate within very tight parameters. The government has also said to zoning and planning boards like yourself, because we deem this safe, we don't want planning and zoning boards saying we don't. It's well within this board's purview to consider site plan issues, water, drainage, appearance, and things like that. But the perceived health effects has been left to the jurisdiction of the federal government. And like I said, we've built literally tens of thousands of antenna sites throughout the Commonwealth, throughout the United States, and I think we're up at about 2,000 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts alone. So, people have gotten over the concern that there are issues with respect to these sites.
Thank you, Council. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to any of the planning board members if they have any questions. Mr. Gentleman, if I could start with you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to, one gentleman asked about whether or not your input tonight is valuable to us and important to us and worth anything, and I just want to let you know that it's extremely valuable to have people come down. Regardless of what happens here tonight, it's extremely valuable to have you folks come down here and give us your opinion, give us your observations. In fact, even though this is turning into a long night for us, it sort of restores my faith in my city and my community to see so many people down here speaking on an issue like this, because it means you care. And as long as we have people in the city that care, I think we have a fighting chance. So thank you for coming down. Thank you for your input. And I also wanted to let you know, just in case you hadn't had any experience with us, we are a citizen board. So we're just like you. We're just citizens who have volunteered to be part of this board, and it's our job to sort of mediate, because we're one of you. It's our job to mediate issues like this and make a decision based on your input and based on what we know about the different zoning codes and laws. So first of all, I wanted to say that the attorney mentioned the health issues. So we've had a few of these come before us before, and I've always been concerned about the health issues, but we can't deny this based on health issues. That's by law. We can't do that, as the counselor just mentioned. I have a degree in electrical engineering, although I'm far from an RF expert. But I work in the electronics industry, and I've talked to many people who are RF geniuses, radio frequency geniuses, and I've said to them, I've talked to them about these things that come before me, and I said, is there a health risk there? And who knows, maybe 20 years from now we'll find out that there's some health risk. But these guys all tell me that the greatest risk from these cell towers is that they might fall on you. and not from the electronic emissions that come from these cell towers. And furthermore, they tell me that it's a lot more bigger health risk for you to put that phone on the side of your head than it is to be next to a cell tower. So, like I said, I'm not really an expert. We have to go by what, we know about the situations. And as I said, we're prohibited by law from denying this for health reasons. I did want to ask about noise. Several people talked about noise coming from the site. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the noise that this tower might make and what your experience is with that.
Like I said, there's no on-site generator, so all there is there's no noise-generating energy source. The electronics themselves go in weatherproof cabinets, and they're pretty much self-cooling because they're outdoors, they're not enclosed. There is a small fan, similar to the fan that's on your computer, that will cool it in the event of an extreme heat situation. But that sound is, like I said, the noise generating from your computer, you wouldn't be able to hear anything outside of the fenced-in compound.
And so some people brought up humming and buzzing. Is that the type of noise you would expect to hear from a site like this?
No. Sometimes, sometimes you hear humming from electrical transformers.
Mm-hmm.
The type of transformer that we use is insulated. It's a ground-mounted one as opposed to a pole-mounted one, and it's insulated so it doesn't generate any noise.
Okay. Yeah, I mean these towers are everywhere, and it's kind of a catch-22. I mean, there's one down the street from my house in a church steeple that probably most people don't even know about. And it's kind of a catch-22 here in a city like Lowell because, we have so many residents. So, of course, we have so many residents, we don't want to put the towers near all the people. Yet, we need to, if you want to pick up your cell phone, you want it to work. And there's also laws that prohibit us from, refusing these sites just because we don't want it, just because we don't like it. The government requires us, the Communications Commission requires us to allow the siting of these things. But here in Lowell, we do need to be sensitive to the location because of the density of the population. I think we've been pretty creative when these things come before us in disguising them, hiding them, and putting them in places where they're less likely to be seen. It certainly is an issue with regard to property value. I do think if I own a piece of property and somebody puts a cell tower up where it can be seen, it's going to reduce the value of my property. So that is a concern. And when we have so many residents who are within sight of that tower, I am concerned about the impact on the community with regard to that and what, its unsightliness and the real or not concern about health issues. Can you tell me about what you did to consider co-location on the existing sites, specifically like on Bolt and Washer Street?
Yes. We've been working on this site from our perspective, over 3 years. We looked at what we have for existing sites, and there are folks like Andrew who drive around and look at everything tall. We looked at there's a tower on Bolt and a tower on Washer. Mm-hmm. That, it makes Andrew's job easier if he can turn in a existing site rather than try to build a new site. But unfortunately, those are too close to an existing facility we have just to the north of Bolt and Washer. We looked at a water tank in Chelmsford that was mentioned, I believe, on Carlisle Street, and that would have, again, been farther away from where we need to be, but would be the compromise between where we need to be and what we can get easily. And again, the water district, which I believe has designs to take that down at some point, was not interested in leasing to us. And we proposed something on Gorham Street as an alternative with issues here. We don't like to build towers, and I think, by evidenced by the fact that we have so many sites already in Lowell, and there really aren't that many towers in Lowell because of the fact that there are smokestacks and church steeples and existing commercial buildings with antennas and some residential buildings with antennas. It's just, as you get farther from downtown, as you get farther from the industrial areas, which, everyone said go to the industrial areas, well, we're already there. But as you get farther from those areas where there are no smokestacks, we're forced to look at building new structures. But we looked at everything reasonably tall in that area.
So let me ask you about the Bolt location for a minute. This is a map of the city. And you don't have to look at it carefully, but let me just point out, your location is somewhere around here in the city, right about there. And the Bolt Street location is somewhere right about here. So just a relatively short distance away from the existing tower. As a matter of fact, if I look at your map, it's on a different scale, so it's kind of hard to tell, but I was doing a few calculations here while the discussion was going on. It looks to me like this location here is where your proposed tower is, and the location of the Bolt and Washer Street tower is right about here, roughly, right? Definitely in this general direction. Seems to me that location would actually bring you more to the center of the area where you say you have a gap. So I don't understand why you are saying that that's an inappropriate location for your tower.
Okay, what we have here, and unfortunately I don't have large scales. I have here a series of maps showing.
Why don't you grab a microphone there?
What this map shows is the coverage that we have right now and started where we're proposing to go, which is the cemetery site. What this map shows is there are two towers, one on Bolt and one on Washer, and I'm not sure which one, but they're pretty much close to each other. And one we looked at, and the next available height is 130 feet. And as you can see, if we were to put antennas there, it substantially duplicates what we already have on an existing facility and doesn't fill in the gap down here, which is what we're trying to do. So, and then there's this one is Bolt and one is Washer, and the one on, I'm not sure which one is which, but the one is substantially shorter, and so we did look at those, but it's very duplicative of what we already have, and still doesn't avoid the need for the site down farther south.
How do you make these measurements? How do you tell what kind of coverage you're going to get from a site that's 130 feet at that location?
I have with me Dinesh Dasani, who's a radio frequency engineer, and I think I'd rather have him answer that question.
Sure.
Yeah, hi. These are computer-generated maps. What we do is we collect actual data with the phone, and then we simulate that data into these coverage maps. So it's a computer-generated software. What it does, it simulates coverage that I'm going to get at that particular height. It considers various factors such as terrain, height, power levels, kind of antennas I use, kind of patterns I have, and that's what kind of gives me an idea of what kind of height do I need to achieve the coverage objective that I need.
Mm-hmm. Looking at this, it really doesn't seem to be duplicative significantly to what you currently have. It looks like that site on Bolt Street would increase your coverage.
For coverage, what I want to say on that is that we have limited set of frequencies which we have to reuse. So I cannot have two sites closer to each other. What they would do is cause more interference to me rather than providing me more coverage. So we can say as in good coverage versus bad coverage, it probably will give me more bad coverage than good coverage because I have to reuse the same frequencies. So that's why I need to be equidistant. A. B, it doesn't even serve the purpose. I don't want to cover the area that's already covered. There's no point in putting...
Well, even the cell tower you're proposing has some duplication, right? There's a tower just a short distance away from that. So there's some duplication regardless of what location. Isn't that true?
Yeah, what I'm going to achieve is good in-building coverage. What currently is there is coverage inside the car, not inside residences. What we're achieving with this particular site is coverage inside the residences, or in-building coverage is what I call. So the way the technology works, I'm going to have some kind of redundancy from every site because they do overlap towards the fringes. That's the calculations that we do and play with the frequencies that we have. So the minimum overlap we have, the better it is.
Okay. Just before you sit down, can you address the point that one of the gentlemen that came to the microphone brought up about coverage in his home? He's in an area that you deemed this low in-house coverage, yet he says he gets 4 or 5 bar service in his house.
I would definitely want to know where exactly his house is. These are, like I said, computer generated, so these are not error-free. Plus the bars on the phone doesn't really mean, from a technical perspective, what we do is we measure the signal. It's called something called dBm, what we measure. The stronger the signal, the better it is going to be for me. These days, the kind of phones that I have, for people don't use their phones for just making voice calls.
Sure.
They have data, they have YouTubes, and they want faster connections, they want email. So the stronger signal I have, the better it is. I don't know what kind of phone he has. I don't know what kind of service or bearer that he is, or what he was trying to do. The data that I have is collected when we do the drives in general in the area.
So you have, basically, you make estimations on coverage based on computer-generated information, and there could be errors, in this, in your analysis.
Yeah, but the probability is very less. It's not that 50% of my data is incorrect. That's not the way it works.
Okay. All right, thanks. As I look at our code, it says in section 7.6.5, it says that substantial evidence has to be provided by the applicant to demonstrate other limiting factors that render existing structures or telecommunications towers unsuitable. And with this tower, just a short distance on Bolt and Washer, I'm not sure I'm convinced that you can't achieve a lot of your goals, and maybe even come up with a tower that's more central to the gap that you're trying to fill by using a tower there. And I guess, you've already given me a response, but that's my feeling, is that I feel like there needs to be substantial evidence. And based on what you've shown us so far, I don't know if the evidence is substantial that the existing tower couldn't meet the majority of the needs.
One of the things that you mentioned is something more central. That puts us in the more densely residential area around Gorham Street, where you don't have large lots. So, one of the issues is this isn't exactly where we want to be. It's where we compromised with the town, or the city of Lowell, given the fact that there's a large size lot and it's not being residentially used. The dilemma that we have every day is that we want to be near the residences.
Sure.
We don't want to be on a residentially used lot. We can't go on a single-family home lot. And in that, north and east of Boston Road and the Gorham Road area, you're talking about a much more dense area with much smaller lots. So we were forced to move south and west in order to get a lot that had the requisite size.
Sure, but if there's an already sited tower, then that doesn't apply, right?
But if you look at the maps, notwithstanding the duplication that we get that Dinesh is trying to avoid, putting a site on either Bolt or Washer doesn't obviate the need for a site near the cemetery.
Sure. And the site near the cemetery doesn't eliminate the need for a site, further down that would cover this gap that you have over here, right? So looks like you probably need more than one location to completely fill this gap.
We're doing the best we can here.
Right.
And
I understand. The dilemma that we have is that, based on the demographics of a city like Lowell in the region, is we have so many people here that, just planting a 150-foot pole in the middle of the city, even if it is 150 feet from a property line, creates a problem. That's why we have so many towers on tops of buildings and in church steeples and on chimneys, because if you plant that pole, down the highway a couple of miles, nobody's going to see it, or very few people will see it. You plant it next to the highway in Lowell, and you got, 200 or 300 families that are affected by it, 200 or 300 properties that are going to be impacted by it. So we have to be very sensitive about doing that. And where there's another already cited location that this board has already approved because of its location, not that far from the existing site, that, yeah, I can see based on your map that it's going to change the coverage model a little bit, but it looks to me, based on the evidence that you provided, that it solves the biggest part of the problem. Not starting with that one seems like the wrong thing to do.
We would have.
And I don't think you've provided, you provided me some charts that might have errors. I don't think you provided substantial enough information for me to say, oh yeah, that existing site is just not worthwhile. It has to be at another site. So, that's my feeling on it, and I'll let the other board members comment.
We could have been on that site over 3 years ago. Those sites, we identified this as an area of need, which is why we came with Gorham Street. Had we could have gone on for technical and achieved the technical objectives, we would have. We don't do this randomly, and
Still, you need to provide substantial evidence that that's the case, that site is not worthwhile. And I'm wondering, will this become a moneymaker for you? Will you be able to rent this pole to a bunch of other, services and make income off of it?
There's multiple parties here. U.S. Wireless is the owner of the tower.
I see.
They will own it and rent out space. It's like a multi-tenant building.
Right.
They will rent out space
and
to T-Mobile.
you represent them.
And I'm here on behalf of both of them. T-Mobile is one of the tenants. One of the things you got to remember, though, is that the city of Lowell is the landowner, and one of the arrangements that we made with the city of Lowell under our lease agreement is that as we rent more space to other tenants, our rent increases. So it's a benefit to the city of Lowell as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fischett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to reiterate what Mr. Genron had to say regarding the health issue of these types of facilities. And I certainly can understand residents' concerns, because prior to serving on the board, I myself and a group of residents went before the Zoning Board of Appeals to speak against cell tower going in at Lowell General Hospital. And the Zoning Board of Appeals denied it, and it was appealed, and it was overturned, and it was sent back to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the city solicitor, Dave Fenton, basically issued a letter saying you have no choice, you have to approve it. So that's the conundrum that the boards are dealing with, I think, across the country, as even you read about in the newspaper from abutting towns, and residents express health concerns. And as Mr. Genron says, maybe 30 years from now, who knows, 20 years from now, but at least at the moment, we don't have that as an option to make a decision. I do want to clarify something here, and these become very, I think, somewhat difficult to juggle when they come before us, the planning board, for site plan review, not special permit. So a lot of what we've been talking about here this evening falls under the purview of special permit. And Aaron, if I can just clarify that. to make sure that it's correct. I think Mr. Genrin brought up some very good points, and I had circled that myself regarding even the 5-mile radius, and I think council did a good job explaining how that was somewhat outdated, but then having to demonstrate that other locations are not appropriate. But that's under special permit criteria. So I just want to make it clear what we're making our decision on here tonight. This is site plan review, so.
It is site plan review, but it is under the planning board's purview to review other possible co-location opportunities. So under 765, the section 765, where it requires additional submittal requirements or information dealing with existing structures that may be used for co-location, both the planning board and the zoning board have the ability to review those and review the technical information that's provided to make the determination that there isn't the contention that there isn't a structure available to be used to cover the service gap. But again, the discretion available to the boards are different from site plan review to zoning board review. Site plan review is the same level of discretion that any other site plan review is with the planning board, as the level of discretion with the special permit is more discretionary, I guess.
Right.
You have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more.
Right. And given past experience, that's where I see that they have the flexibility to press a little bit more on some of these issues, but understood that in that section, then applicability to 11.35, which is site plan. But my concern is, in taking a look at this site, is I'm looking at the map that was provided, and just to make sure that I'm looking at the correct map. Based on the balloon test, you've identified where it was visible from various locations. And it doesn't appear that there's any photos and there's any sign that the balloon was visible from Woodland Park. And I just want to confirm how this particular report was developed, and I'm assuming that you had individuals go into that development to take a look. It appears that is it Bigelow Street, and we do have a photo that you can see, and I don't know if that's actually one of the Woodland Park condominiums that's in the background on here, but just trying to determine if in fact that was taken into account. Because I will tell you, the day of the balloon was flown, which was St. Patrick's Day, I took a ride over there and actually took photos from Gorham Street, and I was surprised that at least where the trees were, I was concerned about those residents, that you really, even with the leaves down, you really couldn't see the balloon very much. But I have to confess, I did not view it from Woodland Park. So I'm just, if you have anything that kind of supports this particular map here, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, what the engineers do is they put a balloon in the air and they drive around. And one of the maps that we have here, in the photograph, shows the roads that they drove, the green roads, and the roads that they, and it's this map here. It's the green roads are the roads that they drove, and the red spots are where it's visible. And then, and as you can see, and it's kind of hard to see given this scale, they took photographs from various vantage points. And they note that it's intermittently visible along the Woodland Road area because of, different vantage points and different buildings and different trees. And one of the photographs that they submitted was a photograph from Woodland Road, or I'm not sure if it's Woodland Road, but it's one of the roads in the condo development. And you do see the balloon barely above the trees, and there's a small antenna there. that you see. So it's not invisible, but it's of minimal visibility. And the other thing I note too is that they took these snow on the ground. They did this in early March, St. Patrick's Day. There's no leaves on the trees. And as you get more leaves on the trees, it's gonna become more mitigated.
This isn't Woodland Park, though,
I'd
right?
like to add a comment, if I may.
You didn't take a photo from Woodland Park?
I believe, and I can't see it, but it's,
I'd like to add a comment, if I may.
All right, now, sir, they have to ask the questions first, okay?
yeah, isn't that Woodland Park right there? The condo development right in here?
Yes.
Right, and then C, photograph C is taken from right there. And this is photograph C.
This is right here.
And you can see from the detail, there's spotty coverage in between trees and buildings along, in the neighborhood here, but for the most part, it's not visible. Where you get the visibility is along Boston Road and Gorham Street, where, you know, you don't have the tree canopy for the cemetery.
Okay, thank you. Can you just ask some questions relative to the site? On the comments from staff regarding the transformer, and I noticed you've got, at least in the plan here, 14 shrubs scheduled to be wrap around the site, screening it from Boston Road. If you be looking at the transformer, if I'm looking at this correctly, this would be more left to the left of the fenced-in location. Would you be looking at additional plantings in and around there?
The transformer is this high. It's a small, you know, it's probably 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. We could certainly put plantings around it.
Yeah. What is the exact dimension of that? I'm sorry?
Don't quote me, but it's about 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet.
Okay, okay. All right. And then the height of the proposed fence, I believe in the application, was that 8 feet?
That's correct.
Correct. Stockade. Is there ever any danger of any fire? And that was brought up, and I don't believe I saw a comment from fire department, but is that ever a concern with a facility like this?
The electronics are just like, they're basically computer components. There's not a lot of heat generated, and they're intermittently cooled, and they're weatherproof. They're not contained. So there's nothing, you know, there's no enclosed area that would generate a fire. And if there was, like I said, this is very easily accessed by the public safety and fire vehicles, because it's right at the end of the parking lot of the recreation facility.
Now, and Aaron, did DPW, did they work with other departments in determining the site as far as from that location? I know you have a letter from Mr. Snow.
Yeah. I wasn't involved with the site location process that was identified. I do know, however, for this site, what brought up the location in this general area was the issue going back to 1400 Gorham Street, which was the cell tower that was discussed earlier, and that the proximity, I think that was set back 90 feet from the parcel boundary of the neighborhood over there. Right. And so what kicked the whole idea off of identifying locations on city property was to better control location, site location, and to identify sites that would mitigate the proximity to residences as much as possible. but I don't know who or
Mhm.
what the process and identifying
whether or not there
specifics
was
of that
consulted
location.
with any of
I
the
suspect that this site, and it sounds like from Mr. Parisi that the cemetery department played a significant role in identifying where in this location it might go or would be appropriate from their perspective.
Okay, thank you. At the moment, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Mr. Lockhart?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Relative to the site itself, I did visit the site, but I'm not familiar exactly where the Woodland Park development is. Could you point out on a site plan specifically where that is? And give us an idea as to how far away this tower would be to the nearest residence there?
400 feet at most. My bad.
So that's gonna be, yeah. Yeah, so here's this. This is,
So through that wooded area? Yeah, all right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, straight back. And the facility itself, the fence will be 400-plus feet from the property line, and I'm not sure how far the buildings go inside the property. And then the tower itself will be in the middle of the compound, so approximately 425 feet from the tower itself.
Can you describe the vegetation between the two?
That's correct. And one of the things I submitted, I'm not sure if you saw it, was some aerial photos that show the vegetation.
It looks from the aerial photographs like it's pretty thick wooded area.
That's correct.
Yeah, all right. The documentation also indicates that it's almost a 12-acre site. And you've located the tower, it could almost be the right field pole, right next to the ball field. Is there a reason it had to go right there?
Again, it was done in conjunction with conversations with the cemetery department, DPW. We tried some different alternatives. We tried to stay outside of the wetlands, which it gets, as you go closer to the Woodland Park neighborhood, there are designated wetlands there. It was designed in an area that we don't have to take down any trees or anything. So, so it was, we didn't want to impact the cemetery use of the property to the north. We were told not to impact the Boy Scouts' use of the property for growing Christmas trees or selling Christmas trees. We didn't want to impact the parking for the recreational facility, so there was a lot of factors that went into discussing where it went.
For the site itself, you've indicated that you could not enclose the transformer on the padded area.
That's correct. We can shield it with bushes, but we cannot enclose it. It's got to be accessible to the utility company.
It's got to be accessible to what?
To the utility company, the power company,
Can't
national.
you put it in a little chain-linked area and lock it? I mean, where I'm coming from here is, you're right next to a baseball field, and there's going to be kids around, and a piece of equipment sitting out behind a couple of bushes makes me a little nervous, that's all. Is there a way to get around that?
We can ask. I will tell you that it comes up often, and the utility company always says, we need unfettered access to it. And so, and I'm not sure why, but...
Well, they're all not located next to a baseball field either, you know? Just a concern.
Your concern is access or visibility?
Well, my concern is access by kids.
We would agree to a condition that we move it inside the fence if permitted by the utility company.
All right, so you can...
We don't care, it's the utility company that
But
cares.
tonight, that's fine, yeah, all right. The city engineer had some comments that she submitted to us. Are you familiar with her memorandum? And do you have any issues with what she said, stated here? Lisa DeMayo dated March 25th.
Their comments seem to revolve around erosion control and wetlands, and not wetlands, stormwater runoff. And we believe we've already done that, and we have data to support it, and we'll provide that to the engineering department.
All right, so, I mean, there's nothing earth-shaking here, but she did submit some comments. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Any Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. These review of the cell phone towers are always problematic because nobody wants a cell phone tower in their neighborhood. They don't really benefit the neighborhood in any respect unless you own the piece of land that the cell phone tower is going on. That being said, we do have to make provisions for approval of them when appropriate, and we've had a lot of discussion tonight about the process. Just to restate it briefly, it's a two-stage process as far as we're concerned. It's coming before us for site plan review, and our job, if it fits the site plan and complies with the zoning requirements, we're obligated to approve it. We can put reasonable conditions on that approval to deal with some of the issues we've talked about tonight, but that's our job. As a butters, or if you receive notice as parties in interest, you also have the opportunity, if you don't agree with our decision, you have your own appeal rights, not only before this board's decision or also before the Board of Appeals decision. The Board of Appeals has a different purview. They don't look at the site plan per se. They look at different type of criteria. So much of the information that you've presented here tonight will be interesting to them as well. So I urge you all to attend that meeting if it does in fact pass this board tonight. Aaron, I just wanted to ask you, you had a very lengthy memo which Attorney Parisi addressed in detail right at the beginning of his presentation. Just in reviewing the information that he submitted, are you satisfied with the responses that he gave to your concerns, or is there anything in your mind lingering that still has to be addressed?
Sure, I can try to go through each of these and address them. The first comment, I'll just go through them one by one. The first comment addresses the type of pole, and we were recommending a discussion about other options that would reduce the visual impact. The monopole, which is one that was proposed for 1400 Gorham Street, although it's clearly not invisible, puts the antenna, the 3 antenna, into the inside of the pole. We feel that it pushes it back into the background a little bit more and makes it less visible. Although, from the sounds of it, that the whip antenna, which provides the public safety communication, is not able to be located within that. That sounds reasonable. I haven't seen any documentation. We did some research into the different types of towers that might be available for use at the site, and we didn't see any indication that the interior monopole could accommodate something like whip tower. So this seems to be as best they can do, given the requirements of the RFP. We talked, I think, extensively about the possibility of Washer and Bolt Street. I haven't been able to review the maps that have been submitted tonight to a very good degree. But, you know, so, you know, if that data is there and the board's reviewed it, you know, that will be again reviewed by the Zoning Board of Appeals with the same review criteria. We'll get a chance to look at that a second time. So I would like to have a look at those, but it seems like the part of the challenge with Washer and Bolt is that it doesn't provide the complete coverage of the area, so that there's the possibility that another pole will need to be erected somewhere in the general vicinity of the cemetery, whether it's on the Chelmsford side or not. I believe we talked about the optimum minimal height of the structure. Item 4 talks about access to the facility and whether or not one could be climbed. There's a reference in here to barbed wire that's actually from our own zoning ordinance. So what our comments were is that this is probably not an appropriate place to have barbed wire on top of a, so our recommendation was not to have that. They didn't propose that, but we just wanted to make sure that it was known that that's not a requirement. It's just something to be considered. Based on the information that they provided, it looks like there are anti-climbing controls that are absolutely appropriate for this project, so I'm satisfied that's been dealt with. We are happy to continue to work with the applicant with the landscaping issue, with both the screening of the transformer and other accessory ground equipment. We can also work with them on other landscaping of the vicinity to help kind of hopefully provide a better screen from a broader perspective. We can certainly work with them more on that. And I think it's a matter of, as far as the stormwater, we'll have to just work with the petitioner and the city engineer to make a determination that what they're providing will prevent any additional off-site stormwater flow. And then we will be reviewing the wetlands determination along with the plans that were submitted to us with the actual delineation on a map and make a determination of whether or not it does require to go to the Conservation Commission. We did look at it. It looks like it's within 103 feet. So the 100-foot buffer is the trigger for a Conservation Commission review. But we'll review that in more detail. And if it does trigger that, we'll be sure that process is followed. They did provide information on erosion and sediment control, but again, that's something I think that would be best to detail with the city engineer's participation. The comment 11 that references a wet stamp, it would be something we'd want with a final plan set. It's more of a seal of approval from the civil engineer to develop the plans. And the proposed conduit, electrical conduit, would need to be approved by the city council, to my understanding. So that's just something that could be worked on, I suppose, as a conditional, if the board saw fit to approve it.
All right, thank you very much. In terms of co-location, how many additional companies would you be able to put on the pole generally?
Generally is the right word. We would construct it for T-Mobile and up to 4 other telecommunications companies. You can't say until they come on, because some people put 3 antennas and some people put 12 antennas, and it's designed for very specific structural loading, but generally it could be an additional 4.
Okay. And just reviewing some of the comments from the neighbors, some people were naturally concerned about the potential for a diminution in resale value of their property. That's not within the purview of this board to even consider on a site plan review such as this. But I'm just wondering, without getting into a long discussion, you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but is there information out there concerning, in general sense, how a cell phone tower impacts resale value residential properties, neighborhood properties?
There's actually an immense amount of information out there. Because of the fact that there are so many towers around, there are appraisers out there that have done research that, with actual data to show the impact of a cell tower on residential neighborhoods. And it really does not have an effect. I can produce a report to that effect for the zoning board if necessary. It's just the perception is gone. There's so many of these out there now that.
Well, I mentioned it, as I said, it's not within our purview, but you hear the neighbors' concerns. I'm sure it's going to be raised again if it passes to go before the Board of Appeals. That may be some information that they may be interested in at that point in time. Of course, there's a legal obligation that you not increase the runoff, and if we approve, I'm sure it'll be with a condition that the stormwater management be reviewed by the city engineer as well. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just have two more questions I want to get back to. One, I know I mentioned about the FCC. Also, I know in our guidelines, you have to also have approval for the FAA for the tower, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you meet that approval?
Yes, we've already gotten approval. I can provide a copy, but
I mean, because I know part of ours, it says approves that the proposed tower complies with the regulations administered by the FAA. And then I know it goes on and says basically that you're not allowed to put signs up there and stuff of that nation.
That's correct.
And no lighting up there except for what's allowed by the FAA, so.
Relative to the FAA, we have determined that no lighting is required because we're under the threshold that will require lighting.
Okay, all right. Because I'm just reading all the communications that we have for the FAA. Also, I know you did mention, the question is that you have to have the land around the tower that is far enough so if the tower falls, you still have excess land on your property. So if you have a 100-foot tower, 150-foot tower, you have to have on your side yard, rear yard, and front yard requirement, excess of 150 feet, which you do have.
We call it a tower height setback, and we meet the tower height setback, yes.
So I know that was on one of your plans, and that was one of the questions we have for site plan, whether it meets that criteria, and I know you indicated that it does meet all that criteria.
Yes.
And just getting to that, it also goes on in our regulations about these is, one that talks about a surety estimate for you to put up either a letter of credit or a bond up to 150%, up to 115% of the cost of the removal of telecommunication facility. And you'd be willing to put up that bond, sir?
That we would agree to a condition to that effect, yes.
Basically, what that bond is for is, one, if they don't continue to use the tower, then the money that they put up, the city would have the right to take the tower down after notifying the owner. Basically is what we call it, it's removal of abandonment of the facility. One is the abandonment by lack of operation, and the other one is abandonment of neglect. Therefore, if they're not working on the tower, the city can notify them it's not being used to take it down. If they don't take it down, the money that they've already put up as a bond, the city uses to take the tower down. Correct, sir?
That's correct.
The bond? Okay. So you'd have no problem with putting up the bond as required. Have you proposed what that figure may be?
No, what we've done in numerous other similar instances is get a condition, either at the special permit, that we produce a letter from a construction contractor that says this is what it will cost, and then the bond, and we give that to the building department or to the planning department in conjunction with the issuance of the building permit, okay, if and when we get there.
And I know sometimes on those, what's been referred to out, and I'm sure the ZBA does it a lot, is they refer to the legal department and have them look over the documentation.
That's fine. Okay.
And I also know that you indicated that, we're just talking about, again, the co-location. Under our regulation says the commitment shall be that a condition of approval that you'd give written, new telecommunication towers a written commitment to allow of co-location in the towers, which you indicate you have no problem with, correct?
Right. We would agree to a condition to that effect as well.
Okay. And just one thing I think you mentioned at the very beginning, but I just want to touch on it again. I know you said you're going to put up, first you said it was a chain link fence, but I think now it was in your narrative, 8-foot stockade fence, correct?
I misspoke, it's a stockade fence.
And basically, I know there was talk about before that, it talks about the security of the fencing. The perimeter of the telecommunication facility shall be enclosed by security fencing, not less than 6 feet, and you proposed 8 feet. And it'd be equipped with anti-climbing controls, and obviously we don't want barbed wire. So you said the tower themselves, they can't climb it unless they bring their own access pieces?
There's no climbing pegs on site, so that it's, the only one that can climb it is someone that comes in, and it's not just a pipe, it's a very specifically fitting thing that fits in, so someone just couldn't get into the compound and climb it without a very specific device.
I mean, obviously, on our regs, it's, it talks about security fencing, so therefore they want to make sure, like it says here, you want to make sure that nobody can climb on it, hurt themselves, such a nature. The fence should be over a minimum of 6 feet. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions on that. I just want to make sure that we had the federal regulations complied with as well. Thank you, sir. Does any of the planning board members have any further questions? Yes, Mr. Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify one thing. So I'm looking at the maps that you gave us tonight, and this one here signifies the current coverage with no additional tower. This one here signifies the coverage with the new tower put in place, I believe. And this one signifies the coverage if you had put the tower on the Bolt Street tower, right?
That's correct.
Now, as I compare these two to the existing coverage, and I know you can't see it from over there, but it looks to me as if you have just as much, if not more, coverage by erecting that tower on the Bolt Street location.
I look at it a different way.
Okay.
In addition to what Dinesh said earlier about the fact that Bolt Street is too close to the existing site, and let me get you an address for that because I've had it all night. But in addition, as you can see, putting something on Bolt Street still has the gap in around the Gorham and Boston and Woodland Park and that whole south Lowell area. So it doesn't recreate. It fills in some other gaps going north towards, let me get the name of the street for you.
Fills in more of the Lowell gap. So we get much more coverage in Lowell with the Bolt Street location than we do with the new location at the cemetery.
So the question is, this one gets more coverage than that, is it?
Yeah. See, if we go up here,
Right.
he's saying it does better up in here, even though we don't get something down.
Just look at the green. You get more green with the Bolt Street location than you do with the proposed location.
Yeah, but if you look at the map, it still doesn't fill in the hole down by Boston Road and Lower Gorham.
So neither of them fill in everything.
Right.
Neither of them fill in everything, but you get more coverage with the Bolt Street location.
No, we get more coverage with the Boston Road site.
That's not obvious from your map. From your map, if I just, take a quick look at the new green, you're getting more green from the Bolt Street location than you are from the proposed location.
One of the other issues, and I know it's tough to talk about, the site in South Lowell also provides us with some coverage into Chelmsford. And telecommunications knows no boundaries.
Sure.
The goal is not to cover Chelmsford. The goal is to cover South Lowell. But one of the benefits of a site at the cemetery site is we get more coverage going farther south into Chelmsford. And again, towns have been very unsuccessful kicking the can into the next town.
Sure.
And because we really disregard jurisdictional boundaries because the signal is the signal and it doesn't stop at the town line.
And I can understand that, but even so, it seems like you get more area covered with the Bolt Street location. And I would suspect that there's more people living in that area that gets covered by the Bolt Street location than the area that gets covered by the proposed location, because Lowell is more densely populated. So if you're looking at subscribers that you cover, you're probably getting more coverage on the Bolt Street location.
One thing I'm going to say is the objective is not to fill in more coverage at places. The objective is to fill in the coverage where we need, is determined by the company, is determined by the search ring. What we do is, there are multiple places probably in a town where we don't have adequate coverage. What is decided or defined by the company is the priority, the needs that they think that they need coverage there. If we go to this Bolt Street location, what it does is it might provide better coverage in that particular area, but it doesn't serve the objective of my ring. There is something called a search ring that is provided.
Yes.
So we need to provide or enhance coverage in that particular ring or area. Now this particular, if you look at the scale bar here, it's almost a mile apart from where we are proposing or we wanting to have coverage.
Okay. So, Aaron, I have a question for you. In the documentation that you gave us, you cite section 7.6.5, and you say that this section requires that the assessment of alternative sites includes substantial evidence that issues prevent co-location on existing towers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's within our purview tonight to suggest that we don't have substantial evidence that Bolt Street is not an appropriate co-location.
Yes.
For this. So, based on that, and these maps showing your evidence were submitted tonight, right? The planning department has never seen them.
Correct. We just got the staff report on Friday, so it took us some time to generate this, Monday being the holiday.
So what we have is evidence that, in my opinion, is inconclusive. I mean, it's evidence that's generated by the applicant. We have an existing tower that's less than a mile as the crow flies. It's probably about a quarter mile as the crow flies from the proposed location. The evidence that's been submitted tonight, in my opinion, is inconclusive and has been generated by the applicant. Furthermore, we have a gentleman here tonight that lives in the location where they say they have no in-house coverage, yet he says he has good in-house coverage. This is not substantial evidence that co-location on Bolt Street is not a reasonable solution. Based on that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we deny this proposal for a new cell tower at this location, based on the fact that they have not provided substantial evidence that would prevent co-location on our existing tower.
If I might interrupt, we just got the request to explain Bolt Street on Friday. Monday being a holiday, we pulled together what we could on short notice. I'd be happy to agree to a continuance if the board would like more evidence and more technical evidence, and perhaps an affidavit from the engineer evidencing the fact that that's not, I'm not sure what substantial evidence is, because it's hard to prove the negative. But I could substantiate these maps with the data that goes into the maps, the criteria that the engineers use to explore it, the thought process that goes into ruling out sites, the specific coverage objective. We do population studies, which is what Dinesh referred to. We have other more technical data, if you want it. Drive test data, dropped call data. There's a lot of data that we could provide if the board were so inclined to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be worthwhile, but I mean, I'd like to see some independent data. To my layman's mind, we have a pole location, a quarter mile, a half mile. I don't know exactly how far it is, but it's not far from the proposed site. And we have a company that's, going to make a lot of money off of this new pole location. We have an existing one. I think we should avoid new pole locations if we can. we have an existing pole location that's very close to the proposed site. And I don't think we've been given any evidence that would suggest that that's not an appropriate alternative. So, I mean, I think more information would be worthwhile, but, there's a motion on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion on that motion by any of the board members, or a second on that matter? Any discussion, or?
I'll discuss. I wouldn't support a motion to deny at this point. I would support a motion to continue to provide the information that Mr. Gendron is requesting. I think it's well within our purview, as he stated, and it's certainly something that needs to be considered by this board. So I wouldn't second the motion or vote in favor of denial. I would favor a motion to continue to allow the applicant to present the information to have it reviewed by DPD.
So I'll retract my motion based on the lack of a second, and I'll replace it with a motion to continue a decision based on the applicant providing information that rules out the existing Bull Street location as a potential site. And I'd also like to add to that, ask the DPD to try to get independent information on that same question. I mean, the applicant is going to come up with information. They'll baffle us with information about why Bull Street was no good. But I want to know for sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I would like to get some independent information about whether or not Bull Street is an adequate location for what they're trying to do here. So I'll make that in the form of a motion, that the applicant provides us more information and that the City of Lowell seek independent information on whether or not the Bull Street location is adequate. Anybody want to second that one?
And there's a motion to continue within that as well?
Yeah, it's a motion to continue to allow the applicant to give us more information and the City of Lowell to provide independent information on that question.
I would second that, and I'd ask the applicant what he thinks is an appropriate time frame to come back with this.
We scheduled the zoning board meeting for May 9th, knowing that there's another planning board meeting on May 2nd. We'd like to come back on May 2nd.
So, May 2nd?
Fine.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to continue the matter to May 2nd. I have a motion, and it has been second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Anybody in opposition to that motion? No. So that motion carries, so the matter will be continued for May 2nd, and we'll be back here for that night. Thank you. Thank you all for attending, and thank you for all for your input. I appreciate it. And the board does as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. I mean, basically, if there's any new information, instead of go through everything all over again, because everything that's already been said tonight is on the record, all by our notes and all by our planning staff, will have minutes to that. So anything new comes out, we'll listen to anything new instead of starting the meeting all over again and, starting at 6:30 to, like tonight, we had 2 public hearings, so if not, the other one would be starting, and they try to throw us out of here by midnight, but sometimes we've been here after midnight. What happens is planning and development is requesting that it be sent to wetland. And that's the condition they may ask of us if we approve it, but they have the right to have conservation look at it independently as well. Okay? Thank you. You're welcome. We'll take a couple of minute recess here so the applicants can move their stuff down. The board members can just reorganize their paperwork for the next matter on the agenda.
request them. Yeah. I'll request them.
Aaron, why don't you take these and I'll get, yeah, you should take, I can get another copy, but you take them first.
Yeah, maybe we could all get copies. What, having that one too? One person. That's right, too, because nobody knew that, yeah. Well, when I walked in, yeah, I did too, but then it was obvious they weren't.
Okay, moving along with the agenda, we have notices from abutting towns. Entertain a motion to place those on file.
So move.
Moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have the ZBA notices. We do have one ZBA notice, and this is for a special permit for variance for telecommunications. This is on T-Mobile on 78 Wedge Street to install and operate a wireless communication facility on an existing water tank. Actually, tonight, when I was thinking, when he was saying that they do put them on water tanks, I happened to say, we have this coming up next. I remember reading it tonight before we get here, so.
How does this impact the coverage area? How does that impact, is that more green on the chart?
So,
Mr. Chairman, since it's on an existing water tank, I move that we recommend approval.
I'll second.
motion made and second on approval. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye, chair votes yes. That completes our recommendations for the zoning board of appeals that are scheduled for 4:25. After that, any further general correspondences? I'll start with planning and development. Aaron, anything for the board to consider?
Let me think. May 2nd, we also have Taco Bell coming in for their public hearing for corner of Parkview and Roger Street.
Which one is it?
Taco Bell. Yeah.
Okay.
I think,
That's the drive-through that was going to be repaired, that turned into a Taco Bell.
I think so, yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Well, right, it required a rezone, yeah.
Right.
At 600 Rogers, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any general correspondence from any of the board members as a result of any of the boards on or anything? Hearing none? Oh, go ahead.
I know it's been a long evening, but just real quick, I should have said something, but I know at the, last night at the NEMCOG meeting, I did announce to the other planning boards especially that we're now utilizing our website to put documents available to the public, so that, again, transparency in government, and actually, I wish I had pointed that out, because several people mentioned that they went to the website, looked at the information, so, again, kudos to the planning department for
I mean,
utilizing.
a number of people tonight said they were able to review everything, so it's good.
It's a lot easier to sit home and view. I mean, you know, like I said, when you see the advertisement, you can come down between 9 and 5. It's hard for people to come down in their busy schedule and, to come in to try to view them and ask them. You know, a lot of times it's easier to, at night, come home after work, sit down, look at it, on weekends or something like that, pull it up and digest it. I mean, it's not easy for everybody, especially people, handicap accessibilities and stuff like that, parking, getting downtown. It's a lot easier just to be able to pull it up at your leisure, too, instead of during business hours when the average person could be working the same hours. But,
I appreciate it, it's good to hear.
yeah. So were they excited to hear that? Were they, did they have any feedback on that when you mentioned it?
Yeah, actually, a lot of eyes opened up. I think there might be some questions, so I gave them Aaron's name.
I don't appreciate that.
Tell them to call them on the cell.
Offer the services, yeah.
So, all right, well, hearing that,
Chairman, I just wanted to let you know that I just got a message that the Bruins won in overtime.
So what is?
Oh, they did?
The Bruins won in overtime.
Oh, good.
While we were deliberating over the
great.
cellular phone, so there is some good news.
Good to hear. I guess they have,
Watch the tape.
Must have been
Yeah.
a great game.
having said that, entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made and
Second?
all in favor, say aye. Chair votes yes. We have adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everyone.